It is 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting, regular meeting of the Old Saybrook Police Commission to order. Let's all rise and recite the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Begin with comments from the public. Is there anyone in the live audience wishing to comment? Is there anyone in a virtual audience who would like to raise a hand and comment? Do you have anyone, Sarah? Thank you. Let's go to item 3, discussion and possible action on the meeting minutes for November 28, 2022. I welcome a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Good job.
Yes, they were long minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, special meeting minutes for January 5, 2023. I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. A special meeting January 10, 2023. I welcome a motion.
And so moved on that one too.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Unanimous.
Abstaining, I wasn't here.
Okay, Chief, executive reports.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. We'll start first with the fiscal year 23 operating budget. Printouts of all 3 sections of our operating budget have been included in your packets and posted online. I think we're looking in fine shape. I have no concerns about anything at this point.
Good. Any questions?
I had one question on the field service.
Mhm.
There was extra personnel to the tune of 7,587. What was that?
So we'll run a deficit in extra personnel from now until the end of the year, but we'll run a positive balance in salary. So as we have full-time positions that are not filled, when we backfill those vacancies in the schedule, the monies come from extra personnel.
And you'll probably only have to repeat that maybe about another dozen.
Oh, no problem. Well, we should approve by gas. I used to have to answer that
No, because
question.
when you started to say it, I remembered that's exactly
Yeah, no
what you
problem.
said before.
Any other questions? All right. Let's move on to the fiscal year 24 budget process.
Great, thank you. So the budget obviously is now officially with the first selectman. He's working diligently with the finance director to compile a budget to bring to his board. I'll certainly let this commission know if and when the Board of Selectmen wants to talk with us. And then certainly after March 1st, if the Board of Finance would like to discuss with us. We haven't published our budget books yet. It's coming, just a little bit of a lack of bandwidth in the executive offices over the last couple of weeks, but those are coming. I did receive a question. I think it was from Mr. Swan from the Board of Finance during the presentation, but correct me if I'm wrong. Someone asked if I could drill down the data just one more level to find out with our motor vehicle enforcement, the resident versus non-resident breakdown. So we sent that out to our statisticians, Charlie and Dan. And I do have a breakdown of resident versus non-resident for infractions, and I can obviously scan this and send this out to everyone and the Board of Finance. I'm actually going to put it in the budget book as well. But for infractions, 283 to non-residents, 108 to residents. Misdemeanor summonses, 113 to non-residents, 35 to residents. Verbal warnings, 121 to non-residents, 48 to residents. And 1,070 written warnings to non-residents and 331 written warnings to residents. So I don't know what that data really tells us, other than it's data. So I'll be more than happy to include that in the budget book to hand that out. Obviously, whether you're a resident of Old Saybrook or not does not dictate the enforcement action that's chosen by the police officer on the traffic stop. But they generally, majority of those show our balance between resident versus non-resident contact. So I guess they should be somewhere in that range. And that's all I have on the fiscal 24 budget process.
Thank you. On to off budget accounts. Are there any questions that anyone had?
Yeah, do you mind if I mention one thing first? Sure. Thank you. The only thing I'd like to mention, it's a little bit later on in the agenda as well, but if you look at the insurance off budget account, you'll show that that's showing a negative balance at this point. We're still waiting on a check for over $70,000 from Kerma, plus another check for some of the things from the Hartford Steam Boiler Company regarding the lightning strike. So that will return to a positive balance, but obviously we had to pay vendors as they did work for us.
I almost like what?
Yes.
Are the permit payment with respect to vehicles or something else?
Well, it's a trifold. It's gonna be the doors, I'll speak to in a little bit, the lightning strike and then some vehicle things. So anything that has to do with insurance comes out of that account.
Okay.
Do we still retain the information back to 2017?
Well, we certainly don't get rid of it, so yeah.
There's nothing else on off budget accounts. Let's move on to the new patrolman.
Great. So let me just give you some personnel matters in general, and then we'll certainly talk about the new patrolman. So Pat Hanley, our custodian, is still out. He was approved for a 1-year unpaid leave of absence, so he remains in that status. Caitlin Murray texted back and forth with her today, so we're excited that she's definitely coming back February 1st. So we're eager to have her back in the Emergency Communication Center. The 2 officers that were injured are back to work. The final one came back today for the evening shift, so we're happy that they're well enough to report to work. The new patrolmen, so Sarah Salino and Eric Lawrence. Those would be the 2 patrolmen that I hired under your temporary authorization between December and January. They're both at the Connecticut Police Academy. They're scheduled to graduate in August. And so I'm just interested to hear from the commission on whether you want to meet them after they graduate, or if you'd like to arrange for them to come in at a future meeting while they're still attending the academy for a meet and greet. Whatever you prefer is what obviously we'll try to orchestrate. They are a commuter academy, so they travel back and forth. So they certainly can be here for a meeting if you so wish.
Could we ask them questions about the academy?
Yeah, sure. And I don't see why not. It'd be an executive session. You'd be meeting with personnel. But
I'm
you want to do that?
in favor of meeting with them sooner rather than.
Yeah, totally fine. So we'll arrange that for next meeting.
Yes, that's good for me too.
Great.
What is Eric's last name?
Eric Lawrence. So Sarah Salino and Eric Lawrence. And let's remember our friend TJ Egan, who's already at the academy. He was here for you to hire in person. He graduates hopefully sometime in March.
Okay.
Are these lateral hires or they're brand new? They have to go.
These are all brand new because they're at the police academy.
That's what I'm asking. They have to go for the full time.
They have to go for the entire academy, correct?
6 months.
It's about 26, 27 weeks. And then of course, there's the 10 weeks of field training after that. So long time. Long time.
Shall we move on to fleet update?
Sure. So fleet update, hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday, the gentleman who bought the final 2 cars is coming to pick up the final 2 cars. We're making sure his check cleared. I think we double checked with town hall. We're in the process of doing that.
Yep.
Before we let the cars leave the yard, but it's one person that successfully bid on those 2 cars. And as I reported during the budget presentation, we'll have a surplus in that line item. We have a few final things that we want to do to the remaining fleet with the money that we brought in, but we anticipate turning back in about $10,000 to the project. So I'm really happy that when I do that final presentation for maybe is next month, that entire project, which lasted way longer than anybody in this room wanted it to, most of all myself, was not only on budget, but ended up in a surplus. With all if you think about everything that happened, right? COVID, the supply chain, inflation, the microchip thing, for that to come in on budget, actually with a surplus, I'm really happy with. So,
Question,
yes.
did the SROs have their cars now?
Yeah, so the SRO cars are done with the exception of their seats and some radio programming, but they have their portable radios, which is fine for them to drive the cars back and forth to school. This new striping was done. Commissioner Callie actually sent me an email. She's all happy about it. She took a picture of one in a driving rainstorm. But the SROs, it's great. It's a huge operational enhancement for us that there's those 3 dedicated cars. No one's wondering who's taking what in the morning anymore. And as we have a lot of private duty jobs lately, we're not beg, borrowing, stealing to try to get a marked car in front of the school. So we just have to fix their seats because they're a little bit dilapidated. So we'll get that done and get their radios programmed. But otherwise, all the other equipment is ready to go in their cars. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Officer Rooney requested a refrigerator to be installed.
He wants a refrigerator. Well,
Just kidding.
tell him to buy ice.
Okay. Anything else on fleet update?
Nothing else?
All right, let's move on to the leading facility claims.
Great. So as alluded to just a little bit before, we have two major facility claims. If you remember, I briefed the commission on our door issue during COVID. We wiped down the doors 3 times a day like the CDC told us to. What the CDC did not tell us is that the doors were absorbing all of that moisture and causing the brand new doors to bow out on the bottom. So we contacted Karma, our insurance company, and they came out and took a look at the door. They sent a door specialist who has never seen this happen before. They submitted our claim and over $70,000 worth of doors were replaced. And the only cost to the town was $1,000. Or deductible of $1,000. So all the doors have been replaced to date. There are 3 doors, I believe, that need a little tweaking. One came in with a scratch on it. One came in a little bit too short. So those just have to get swapped out. But we received the invoices from Downs Construction and also the company that supplies the doors, which was the original company with the construction, by the way, that did the doors. And we received their invoices. We'll be paying them, and Kerma will be reimbursing us. So there's that. And then we're still working with the Hartford Steam Boiler Company. That is the insurance company that Kerma subcontracts to for lightning strike claims. So if you remember, I told the commission back on September 25th was when our 180-foot radio antenna got struck by lightning and caused a surge, a power surge within the building that damaged a whole bunch of different things. Our access control system, blew out a panel on one of our generators, killed a couple Cisco switches, a computer, some other things around the station. So we have filed that claim. I just submitted a very comprehensive report, including pictures and serial numbers and all sorts of things. Some of the stuff that we have replaced already, and some of the stuff is kind of in limbo, like our boiler once again. So the lightning strike caused the motherboard on the boiler to have a big black spot on it, which is not good. And so we still had our temporary hot water heater from the last time lightning knocked out our boiler. So we were able to hook that up again, all Kerma taking care of that for us. Until they authorize the replacement of whatever needs to be replaced in the current boiler.
Okay. If there's nothing else, let's move on to item G.
Thank you. Yes, so municipal and public safety emergency communication system. I just want to brief the commission on this. So in town, obviously, we have a very robust communication system. It's used by municipal government employees along with all the public safety agencies. I oversee the system as the director of emergency management, but obviously it affects the police department because we have radios on our hips and radios in our cars. So when we had a referendum to redo and create the Kate, were you on the board of selectmen for that? No?
No, well, I was at the end.
At the end, okay. So the same referendum that we held for the Kate was the same referendum that we held to go out to bonding to purchase rather, the new communication system. So that's how old our system is. So a lot of the infrastructure is out of warranty and out of serviceability, meaning that there's just no parts for it. You go on eBay and buy parts, but that's clearly not a good way of running a communication system. So in conversation with the first selectman, the fire chief, we've asked the state vendor to tell us what it would take to refresh the system. Getting some base antennas, the microwave links, the things that need to be replaced. And so we're getting estimates in now. I'll be meeting with him, but it's a significant cost. It'll be, around $2.5 million to replace what needs to be replaced. And so I thought it would be important for the police commission to at least be briefed on the fact that we're looking at upgrading as a matter of necessity, the infrastructure to the communication system that supports communication for the police department. So as that moves forward, I'll be more than happy to brief you if there's any additional news.
In the meantime, function is okay.
Yeah, in the meantime, function is great. We've actually had a tremendously and unusually great history with this system of not really failing us. So early on, we had an issue and I bought some extra parts at that time with surplus monies from the budget. And we've used those parts over the years. But we have had very, very few failures of this system. So when it was designed well, which is why we want the same people, making sure that the next version of this will be just as great. The conversation will lead at some point into subscriber units, portable radios, mobile radios, and conversation on whether we want to also have the ability to talk on the new statewide system. And so the fire department's having those types of conversations because they go mutual aid, certainly a lot more than police officers do. And so we'll analyze that and determine, what fits our needs, but also what's the most cost effective. So it's most important to me that a Old Saybrook police officer, while in Old Saybrook, can talk to the Old Saybrook Police Department and other police officers. And so we'll continue to approach it from that angle.
How would this be funded?
It's a great question. So the fire department has, for the last couple of years, applied for a FEMA grant to purchase their subscriber units. But the grant does not allow for any infrastructure updates or the radio consoles that sit in dispatch. So when you had your dispatchers in here and they showed you the pictures of the computers that they use, those are out of service life as well. And so the FEMA fire grant does not allow any monies to support the purchase or replacement of infrastructure or dispatching consoles. So they have not yet been successful to date. I'm going to be actually assisting the fire chief with this next round. So hopefully they can get that, because that would save the town, close to $500,000, $750,000. And then it would either be bonding. There's other FEMA type grants available. So the first selectman is very eager to find any funding sources available first, before we get to the taxpayer funding source to fund this program. So I would say, this is in the very, very early stages.
What is the timeline that we're looking at?
Well, so there's no definitive timeline other than when it stops working, we're definitely going to need to do something. So
It'd be nice to have it
before that. Yes, I agree with you. Being the one that sometimes has to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to figure out what to do to turn the whole thing back on. There are ARPA funds still available, and ARPA monies are for this. We have not approached the ARPA committee with this idea, but that is one approved federal use of ARPA funding. To date, the town of Old Saybrook has not used 1 cent towards public safety. So maybe this is something, not the whole thing, a part of that. Maybe that becomes a discussion down the road. I don't know. That's not going to be up to me. I think the first selectman should spearhead the funding source for this. And I think that the public safety chiefs will come together and explain what our needs are, which are no different than today, but just modern equipment.
Any other questions on that? Let's move on to professional development update.
Great. So a whole bunch of things going on with professional development, which I know the commission likes to see. There have been a couple of mandated trainings that have been accomplished in-house, which is great. So 13 of our police officers have recertified on the Collect system, which of course is a biannual training. The commissioners are familiar with that. Everyone has recertified on the Toxilizer, which is also mandatory, and the body worn camera system policy that is an annual training. That has all been accomplished. Today, this afternoon, 1 o'clock, I believe it was, when your door closed, Captain DeFerry and Patrolman Millardo renewed their certification and their training status for human trafficking. And so when they do that, that allows them to be the in-house trainers, and we're not sending people to other departments or paying people to come in. So we appreciate the fact that they're doing that. Really happy to report that, she doesn't know this, but I promised I'd bring the certificate. So Leah Offner, one of our dispatchers, has just become a dispatcher trainer, which is a very significant step. Whether you're a police officer or dispatcher, and you're selected by the agency executive to be the one to train new folks, to be the one that we say, we want new people to be like you, right, is a huge, huge compliment. And so Leah has finished that rigorous course. And so the next time, we're looking to hire more per diem dispatchers to build up that cadre to support the operation. So our next per diem dispatcher that's hired, Leah will be assigned to train that person in the field. So congratulations to her and everyone else that has done training this past month.
Sounds like a lot.
Thank you.
It is a lot.
All right. Activity report.
Activity report was included in the packet.
Glad to see there's so little crime in January. Short month so far.
Short month so far. It's been a busy month though. My overnight phone logs would show different.
Were there any questions on the activity report?
The only question I had is, we didn't get the full year last year because we didn't meet in December,
We transitioned.
right? So could we get the
You want full 2022?
exact?
Sure, no problem. I can email that out to you. In fact, that might even be part of the budget book, but we can get that to you separately as well.
Oh, okay.
No problem.
Just that I was comparing month to month, and I
Sure.
noticed December wasn't there.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Can I go to everybody?
Yes.
Do you send it out?
Oh, yeah, that's not out there. Of course.
Any other questions on the activity report? All right. Future commission workshop schedule.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it would be great to collaborate a little bit on where we're going with the commission workshops. In my mind, the following topics are left to do. These are in no specific order at all. Keeping in mind that my goal when we started this was to get almost everyone in the agency in front of you at some point. So patrol in general needs to be discussed. I'd love to have a workshop with you and all of our first line supervisors. I think it would be very interesting for you to hear from them on what their job is every day and the things that they have to do, and
The sergeants.
and how their time is really broken up between trying to be a police officer and trying to be a boss at the same time. I'd like to do a separate workshop specific to behavioral health emergencies and the new risk protection order. I think that the commission should know how we handle those types of emergencies, because that is obviously prevalent in conversation, especially during this legislative season.
Is there a unique group that is responsible for that, or is that?
No, that's our police officers, but I think it's important for this commission to understand how we approach those. Obviously, there's a lot of bad publicity nationwide about police officers being dispatched and involved in behavioral health or mental illness types of calls. And I think quite frankly, I think it's responsible of you to know how we do that here. Emergency medical services. I'd like to have someone come in and speak to you about our program and what that entails and show you the different equipment. I mean, after all, it's a large line item in your budget. A separate topic, which is obviously the most litigious section of our agency, detention, prisoner processing, the assignment of bonds, how we do that, and conditions of release. I think that might kind of bring some things full circle for many of the commissioners. I think it's important to have a separate one specifically on domestic violence response and the lethality assessment program that we participate with. We've done that with previous commissions, but we have not done that with this commission. And that is one of our more significant calls that we go to that are very dangerous for police officers. So I'd like the commission to be able to hear about those programs and all the extra things we do to kind of go the extra mile for the victims of domestic violence. You saw as one of my executive goals, I'm putting together that committee to study all of our lethal and less than lethal weaponry and figure out if we're having what we have. So at some point, when that committee has done its job, I'd like them to come back. That could be a whole workshop. I think you should know what we're carrying for weapons. I think that's a responsibility.
And what's in the armory?
And what's in the armory and things to that effect. So,
Unless that's secret.
no, I mean, some of the things that we have seized, but there's certainly no secret with the weaponry we have. We don't have any, secret stun guns or
No hypersonic.
hypersonic, whatever your dreams.
Is there like a secret room?
There's no secret,
That was no.
rooms you're not allowed, but no secret. I'd like to concentrate one workshop, just on the mandated policies. So once a year, you hear me talk about how we send all our policies into post. And there's 13 mandated policies that we have to have. I like just to talk about those. Reason being is sometimes you'll hear in the news, about something went wrong with the notification, a death notification. And I think this commission should be like, oh yeah, we know what our policy is. We had a presentation on that. Or the policy about missing persons and how that is handled. And I think it's your responsibility to hear from us that we have those things. So I think that would be smart. And then the final two, criminal investigations, a big thing that we do. We investigate crimes. I think we should have our detectives in to talk about that. And then I'd like to do a workshop on personnel scheduling. So the commission knows how the schedule is put together, the different things that have to be considered, how often the schedule is changed during the month, things of that effect. So those are kind of my thoughts for workshops going forward, but I was very interested to hear from commissioners if there are topics that we have not done and I have not listed that you are super interested in.
We done like a marine.
We have not. We do that in the summer, maybe.
Maybe on the boat.
Moon patrol on the boat, public meeting on the boat. Sure. Okay, I've added that.
We might need to add a fridge to the boat.
Bridge to the boat.
Yep. If I can address the fellow commissioners, we discussed this about a year ago and we said we were gonna see how these went during our meetings. I don't think we're able to give them ample time during a regular meeting. I think we miss out on what we need to do, and I think it cuts short presentations how to deal with people that are having mental health issues and crisis is huge. Like you just said, the legislature is big on that. I don't want something crammed in here in 45 minutes, an hour, and we're looking at the clock the whole entire time, knowing we have a bunch of other stuff to do. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I don't think these presentations can be cut short to fit into a regular meeting. And I think we agreed last year that we would see how it went.
We did.
It depends on the
And
topic.
what we've experienced is that some have been over an hour and some have been less than half an hour. And my suggestion would be that in advance of a workshop, the chief and I get together and do our best to figure out how long it's going to be. And
I think that's a great idea.
then we can either slot it for a special meeting or keep it on our regular schedule, depending on the other items on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I like having, for you, it's a briefing, which we should be doing. That's the intent of these meetings. But for the public, it's a little bit of professional development. And so if you're used to turning into a police commission meeting on the fourth Monday of the month, you get a little bit of professional, what we do every day. My roll calls, I require the sergeants to include a little bit of professional development every day. So if we have some knowledge shared from the folks that are doing the work, who's on the ground at every commission meeting, I think that's great. Mr. Chairman, I love the suggestion of you and I kind of collaborating to see what fits during a regular meeting.
The school resource officer presentation, which I thought was gonna be school resource officers, I didn't realize we were gonna cover the whole gamut of how everything happens if there's a situation. That was over 2.5 hours. I personally would like that meeting to be held in July or August, maybe at the middle school auditorium, so that parents can come and have their minds put at ease and they see, wow, we have all this equipment. This is, we were in the Board of Ed building, and I thought that was a presentation that should have gone out to a lot more people.
I requested that it was during the school year because it's like fresh and so.
And I'm not sure we're repeating these every year. Like, I think we're gonna get to a point where we've done this.
Yeah.
Well, this takes us through another year.
Yeah, right. But then I think we're done unless there's,
Did you have something you wanted?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that we did say we would see how they went. And I think the thoughts of a special meeting to cover maybe two, like, I don't know, patrol and first line supervisors, they're gonna be here anyway, they're on patrol, and just do it as a special meeting. I'm not opposed to that, rather than to have long workshops and have work to do. That's ours. I like the workshops. I just think sometimes they should be special.
Yeah, like I said, I think we can figure that out.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, just piggybacking what you just said, if you can figure out which ones of these would be the lengthier ones, do those in a special meeting. I mean, I have really found, for me, they have been enormously helpful and very beneficial in terms of my understanding, even when it comes down to budget items. You know, what we're seeing, I can start making the connections from, you know, the different workshops. So I like the idea of them. Do I want to see them at 2 hours on a regular meeting night? No, but I think we should keep going with them as we've been going, and then segregate out those lengthier ones.
Great.
Which I bet we'll be able to do.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. Please.
So quickly, what, oh, I don't, we can really talk about the second meeting, but for the Accountability Act, I'd like to know more about how that's affecting you guys and what, you know, what limitations are on you, like the whole Walmart thing, you can't chase them and that kind of thing. I just would like to know a little bit more about that.
Sure. Maybe instead of,
You can send me an email. if you want to.
but no, maybe instead of the Police Accountability Act in itself, maybe we could talk about, we can sprinkle through some of these patrol, first line supervision. We can talk about times when we feel that we're restricted in what we want to do
Yeah.
in our job. Maybe we can
Yeah.
add that element.
Well, you also have mandated policies in here too, so
Correct.
that all kinds of fits, but you know, we also have the opportunity at times to talk to legislators up at Hartford, so,
Absolutely.
you know, it would be kind of an important thing for us to know this stuff too. So I like the whole idea of doing the mandated policies and even some accountability.
Yeah, talk about when the police are handcuffed themselves, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. Anything else? Any other topics?
If we think of them, we'll let you know.
Great. Okay, thank you, everyone. That was great feedback. Appreciate it.
Okay, item K.
Yeah, so item K, real quickly, February 1st, we start our annual It's Time to Do Your Duty campaign, where we collect diapers and wipes for young families here in Old Saybrook that need just a little bit of a helping hand. And so I will send some flyers out to police commissioners in hopes that maybe at our February meeting, perhaps you're handing some diapers and wipes over to police officers that are collecting them on behalf of the families. I think that'd be a really cool photo op for the police commission. You'll see us advertising that all over town, certainly on social media. You know, we do this annually. This might be our 4th or 5th year. I can't remember at this point, but we do really, really well. And we're happy that we do so well because there are families who truly, truly need this resource. So we'll be working with the Shoreline Diaper Bank again and Youth and Family Services for their Social Services Help Day to make sure that those resources get in the hands of people who need them. And that is it, Mr. Chairman.
What are the dates for that day?
February 1st, to February 28th. Or if I think we need more diapers and wipes, I extend it until we get.
Okay. Let's move on to item 5 on the agenda. The discussion of bylaw amendments, starting with the public comment and procedure bylaw. Let me introduce all of the amendments with the brief history. I'm sure the commissioners recall that proposed amendments were first made, I think, about April. And we were met with opinion of council that the proposals that we submitted were illegal or against policy. The first selectman was good enough to offer to provide counsel to work with the commission to craft new bylaws that would not suffer from the same shortcomings as the original. I worked with John Burcham, an attorney at Burcham Moses, who was recommended to Mr. Fortuna by Jim Talberg, who was the other attorney who opined on the initial proposals. I think Mr. Talberg, excuse me, I think Mr. Bertram and I probably had several hours together, either in person or by phone, and exchanged multiple suggestions. And the result is what is now before us. The public comment proposed amendment is only in one paragraph, that's paragraph 4. And the purpose of this amendment is to make it comply, make our bylaw for public comment comply with the freedom of speech provisions and the petitioning government petitions of the federal constitution and the Connecticut Constitution. The current bylaw does not permit negative comment. The purpose of this bylaw is to permit negative comment, subject to a restriction that commenters are not to identify individual officers or employees of the department by name, rank, serial number, etc. I believe, I know Mr. Bertram believes that this amendment is entirely consistent with our constitutional obligations when we create a forum for public comment. I am mindful of the chief's observation at the last meeting that he was sad to see the term commendation not appear in this revision. And I wanted to give a little note of background on that specific point. The language about commendations is in the sentence that says, members of the public, if they so choose, may submit commendations, comments, or complaints concerning specific employees to the Department of Police Services. My personal view, and I expressed this to Mr. Bertram, was that it's really not up to the commission to tell people what they can or cannot submit to the police department. They can submit whatever they choose to the police department. But to get to the point that the chief raised, I have no objection at all to adding a sentence at the very beginning under the heading public comment, conduct, and procedure along the lines of the following. The police commission welcomes input from the public, both positive and negative. And then can pick up where things are. I don't know if that makes you feel any better, Chief, but that's, I think, a way of introducing both positive and negative. With that, you all have the proposal. I think maybe the most effective way to do this is to just start at the left and proceed to the right and see if anybody has comments, concerns, changes that they'd like to suggest. That means starting with Renee.
I have no comments, no changes, just ready to move on this.
Jessica.
Well, I'd like to hear from Carl and Joe and the chief, and then if I have comments and theirs.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to hear from Carl and Joe and the chief,
Okay,
and then,
right.
yeah, as of right now,
As of right now, you're.
I'm okay, but yeah, I would like to hear. their-
Sure,
Yeah,
we'll hear from everybody.
perfect.
Are we just talking about number 4?
We're just talking about public comment, conduct, and procedure, and the only change is in number 4, paragraph 4, under that.
I don't see how the old one limits what you can say, but that's just my interpretation of it. It says speakers, that what we cut out is speakers are requested to refrain from presentations that discuss work performances of specific employees of the Department of Police Services in a negative manner.
Regardless of whether or not the employee is identified.
Correct.
Right.
So I don't see how that they're requested, but I mean, as the chairman, you kind of dictate the dialogue as it goes along.
Understood. Anything else on this one?
No, it should say somewhere in here. Where they engage, whether it's comment or commendation, comment, I think it should be in this paragraph.
Well, the structure of this whole public comment procedure is at the beginning, we say any individual can address the commission on any subject, and we're now and I would suggest adding an amendment that says that we welcome the input, positive and negative. And then everything that comes after that is a limitation. So yes, 1 is a limitation, 2 is a limitation, 3 is a limitation, 4 is a limitation, and 5 is a limitation. We're not trying to put positive things into the limitations. I would suggest putting the positive thing right up front.
Point taken.
Anything else, Paul?
I think it's a good compromise to add that sentence you were suggesting, but you're suggesting it at the very first paragraph to add it in there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I would say that's a good compromise. I don't have any other changes on this.
Carol?
I think it's an excellent addition. And I think it does belong in the first paragraph. And with that change, I'm ready to go. I don't have anything else.
Joe?
I'm appreciative of that thought because this whole thing reads as very negative. My concern with number 4, though, is that we have a separate procedure for complaints. And public comment isn't the spot for complaints. So I find that a little problematic, right? Because we talked about all the different correspondence and we've talked as a group about the procedures when people have concerns. And here if you have a complaint, come to public meeting. And that seems inconsistent with what we've been trying to do. I guess I'd also be wondering if because you did refer appropriately to the chief's prior concern about the positive piece. Chief, do you think putting that, does that meet what you were thinking? Putting that at the beginning as the chairman suggested?
Well, I have general comments that whenever it's the time, I could address that, plus my other thoughts. Sure.
Thank you.
I was coming to you now.
Oh, yeah, that's why I don't want to rush it, just whatever.
Joe, was there anything else that?
No, that's the problematic piece for me.
Chief, great, thank you very much. First off, before I read the communication that I'll eventually disseminate to the commission, I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this, right, to collaborate with you. And tonight, as I share my thoughts and opinions on the 3 bylaws that are going to be discussed, I just want everyone to take my comments to be at face value, right? So I represent the operation, I represent our personnel, and so my viewpoints on changes to your bylaws come from that lens, which might not be a lens that you are normally looking through when you're thinking about these things. So if you take it in that context, I think it will be helpful to continue the discussion on this bylaw and the other ones. So my letter to you reads as follows. Commissioners, as the commission considers changing its public comment, conduct and procedure bylaw, specifically paragraph 4, I offer the following comments for your consideration. I respectfully request that my thoughts be considered as your current proposal impacts the department's employees and operation. First, the places communication and contacts. I've listed at the end of my comments the language present in the current bylaw, as well as the language that is being considered to replace the current language. You don't need that. You have copies of that. While the differences are obvious, they are also concerning to me. Current language sets clear parameters for members of the public while protecting the employment and property interest rights of our dedicated employees. The proposed change removes the language that reads, speakers are requested to refrain from presentations that discuss the work performances of specific employees of the Department of Police Services in a negative manner. The public most certainly has a right to question and complain about an individual employee and their performance at work. However, the forum to do so is not the Public Police Commission meeting. The proposed change is insulting to the men and women who provide police services in our community, strips them of their rights for personnel matters to be handled within established procedures, and undermines my ability to properly address personnel-related matters in accordance with policy and law. Additionally, the commission should refrain, in my opinion, from involving themselves in personnel-related matters until such time that the matter becomes the jurisdiction of the commission. I feel that the proposed language invites the public to make negative public comments about police officers to the commission at public meetings. This creates yet another reason not to want to work in Old Saybrook. Imagine being a police officer who is trying their best to perform their sworn duties, having to worry about each month when the commission convenes that someone that they have rightfully taken enforcement action against will be present voicing disapproval of their job performance to the commission in public for all to hear, which is captured and archived on video. Comments that are one-sided, out of context, with no factual review or ability to immediately rebuff about a municipal employee's job performance should not be welcomed in this format. Rather, the individual should be directed to participate in the established procedure to air their grievances and have them properly investigated in a manner that is consistent with policy and law. A process that employees have been educated on and have come to expect. Changing this process is a change in working conditions for our personnel. Again, I am not saying that a member of the public cannot or should not air their concerns or grievances. They should. Rather, I am requesting that the commission, through its bylaws, encourage that they do so in a manner that follows established procedure and allows their grievance to be heard while protecting the employment rights of our dedicated employees. The commission has no evidence that I have not properly investigated personnel matters to cause this or any changes to your bylaws. In fact, there are clear examples within the past year of my transparency with the commission concerning serious personnel matters, a transparency that sadly has not been reciprocated. Asking citizens to follow established procedures is not violating or restricting their First Amendment right of free speech. Government is allowed to create rules that its citizens must follow while expressing themselves. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can protest in front of town hall, but you may not do so inside the mayor's office. Rules are established for the benefit of all. In this case, the rules protect the rights of both our citizens and our employees. I must also reiterate my concern about the proposal's removal of the word commendations. Why would the commission choose to remove the suggestion of hearing positive things about employees? Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to hear that we're working towards inserting that again. I submit that the Old Saybrook Police Commission be no different than any other Old Saybrook board or commission when it pertains to negative public comment about the performance of a municipal and/or Board of Education employee at a public meeting. The Board of Education would not permit the discussion of the negative work performance of a teacher during public comment at one of their meetings. The Zoning Commission would not allow their employee to be defamed at a public meeting, nor would the Park and Recreation Commission. Why would the town of Old Saybrook, through its duly elected police commission, treat their police officers and public safety dispatchers any different than any other employee? I see no practical or legal reason to change the existing bylaw. I encourage the commission to support the process that is in place and legally applied that allowed citizens to air their complaints of employee workplace performance while respecting the rights of our dedicated employees. Should the commission still desire changes to this bylaw, I suggest a collaborative discussion with representatives from our respective labor unions and the administration to understand concerns about the current process and discuss enhancements that respect our employees' employment rights. Until such time, I respectfully request that the commission not make any changes to the existing public comment conduct and procedure bylaw. And I have copies of my comments for you and the clerk.
Thank you. Do we have one for everybody?
Yes, sir, that's my. There you go. But it's more. Obviously, I'm hoping we have dialogue about some of the things I mentioned.
So I understand completely where you're coming from. And I'm just trying to think in my mind if there is a happy medium. And I'm wondering if, you know, if somebody comes in and instead of them verbally saying out loud, but they could submit a complaint at the police commission. You know, just, I do have a complaint, I'm submitting it now. Because they may feel more comfortable to submit it in front of.
That is something for next month, the complaint process.
Well, to Jessica's point, if someone came and said, I have a written complaint about a personnel matter, and they hand it to you because they feel more comfortable giving it to you, obviously you have to give it right to me to act on it. But if that person feels more comfortable first handing it to you, for you then to hand it to me,
And doing it in public.
that's fine. My worry is about defaming someone's professional career in a public setting before they have the right for the matter to be adjudicated. It's improper.
I understand where you're coming from, chief. I really do. Which is why we have the language in here about requesting that nobody be identified by name, rank, or any other means that identifies them.
But I would say with the world the way it is, including your new live reporting, virtual, what do you call it?
Press room, the
Virtual press room. If I come in and I say, I'm Joe Maselli from 10 Pheasant Hill Lane, and I'm really upset about the way the cop treated me when he stopped me last week. It's public information, it's all out there. Everybody listens to the scanner. It's too identifiable in such a small city. It really is.
You know, Joe, you and I have had a conversation offline. I firmly believe that citizens should be allowed to come to this meeting and stand up and say, the budget's too high. You have too many cops. I don't like the cars. You should trim back on this. You should have a cop. I believe that's all great. I think that when it comes to personnel matters, there just has to be a procedure that protects our personnel. So, you know, I've been a police officer in Old Saybrook for a little bit now, right? Been chief for quite a while. This would be a drastic change on how we allow the public to talk about our employees at a public meeting. And I'm telling you, if I went to a Board of Education meeting right now and I want to stand up and say, Mr. Smith, I would be stopped, shut off, cut down, because they, like other commissions, do not tolerate.
Yes, but I think ours would also allow the chair, our comments would allow the chair to do the very same thing. That it's against our bylaws for you to identify who it is you're talking about. There's not much difference between what's written here and what's in the Board of Ed.
I think the word job performance means a lot in the labor world, means a lot in employment law, and means a lot with our municipal employees. So, for example, this police commission can't talk about the performance of one of our employees
Right.
unless we notify them, give them the opportunity, right? So we shouldn't allow that same type of conversation during our public comment,
But
which is why personnel performance, I don't think should be a subject of public comment.
But if there was a situation where someone was upset with the way they were treated out in the field, they may not necessarily be coming to identify that person or complain about that police officer, but say, maybe you need to look at what this officer did in a global perspective. So I think that people should be able to come and say what they need to say at the podium, as long as it's not going to identify. And granted, there are ways for people to be identified. That's just a fact of life right now. But I think that this policy is a good policy for us, I mean, with some minor revisions of that sentence. And anything else somebody else may have.
So could we consider adding the words job performance, that we're not going to allow that?
Where would
Negative
you
job
put it?
performance?
Where would you put that?
Jill, the Board of Ed one is exactly like the original one.
Well, that's where we got
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Word for word, because that's the
Yeah,
council.
Was there,
recommended.
so,
It's, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't saying anything.
No, I don't know.
No, go.
Mr. Chairman, so looping back, you kind of talked quickly, kind of reviewed this lawyer, that lawyer piece. If we go back to, would it be the original red line, the last one in number 4, was that our original?
Yes,
So which part of that did the lawyers say violated the constitutional rights of folks? Because you said that's why we're making the change. So I'm wondering what part in there was violative of that we needed to make a change.
the part that says they are to refrain from making comments in a negative manner. Under the Constitution, as I understand it, and as Mr. Burcham understands it, in a public forum, which is what we created when we offer public comment. In a public forum, it's no different from if they were in front of town hall. They can say good things, they can say bad things. That's what the First Amendment requires. But there are some things you can't say fire.
Yes. But this isn't in front of town hall. This is in the mayor's office, in my example, right? So yes, you are allowed to stand on the sidewalk and say, Michael Spira is whatever. But you should not be allowed to say it within the rules of this public meeting.
But
And
that,
we're
that's,
saying you can't do that.
Chief, that's the problem. We don't have to have public comment. But if we do allow public comment, we are creating a public forum and the First Amendment applies. So it's just like being outside town hall.
But it specifically says a specific employee. A negative manner of a specific employee. It's very descriptive and tells you exactly what you should not do.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can't generalize a negative comment. It just means you can't do a negative comment of a specific employee. I mean, that's how I read it. That's all.
Right, whether identified or not. That's the way the current bylaw reads.
Correct.
And the change is to say, if you have something negative to say, we welcome you to say anything negative. That's what you have to say. But don't identify the employee by name, rank. And
All right, well, that's what this says. The old.
Because this one, again, the original, I'm looking at the red version, right? Right above number 5. The negative piece talking about work performance, which is true. You can't violate their employment rights by making a negative comment about their work performance.
And that's the problem. That is not constitutional to have that
But
limitation.
you can't violate, to the chief's point, I can't come in and say something in a public forum that violates somebody's employment rights. You can't be,
Yes,
if it identifies, no,
you can, the chief acknowledges that if you were out in front of town hall, you could walk around with a placard saying Captain DePerry is a no good.
Right, but it's not taped.
But it's not in here.
It's
This is
not
the
in
quote
here.
unquote inside the mayor's office. So to your point, Mr. Chairman, if I was using your rationale that the First Amendment is the First Amendment and this is the public forum, then the restrictions that you put on about name, rank, badge number are also a violation of the First Amendment, right?
That's why it's phrased as a request.
Well, then you can request that a member of the public does not speak negatively about an employee's job performance. I really think it's so important to our employees. I really do.
Redlining the request part.
Yeah, we're not saying that concerns are not going to be investigated. I mean, that is not the case at all. We're just saying that our employees have rights. And this forum is not intended to defame. There's a process and a procedure. And they have to follow that, whether we're operating under the First Amendment of the Constitution or not. There are rules in government.
I mean, to complain about cars are driving too fast on Main Street,
Absolutely.
or the police cars are ugly, or they get washed too often, or whatever it might be, 100%. But to say I wasn't treated fairly by a cop on the traffic stop, that I don't see how we can do that.
And the commission technically, I don't want to get into another issue, but you wouldn't have any jurisdiction on that. You would have to turn to me to say,
Right.
well, you should look into that, right? Because you don't have access to our cameras or the shift logs, or, I mean, it's my job. That's why that regulation is established. And so what I'm trying to say is, I get you want to hear from everybody. I think that's important, but there are processes and procedures on how that information comes in and how it goes out. And you set the tone for your public comment. You choose that. I'm glad you have public comment, but I think that you have to be protective, and that's the wrong word. You have to be respectful. Oh, we'll go with that, of your employees' property rights to their employment. People can make complaints. We'll look into them. We'll even come back to you and tell you what happened with them. But at the end of the day, nobody has the right to be one-sided defamed, who's a municipal employee. I mean, we just don't do it.
Would it be palatable to just change, so going back to the current revision, to the extent speakers wish to complain about particular specific police or employee, they should follow the complaint procedure.
Well, I mean, I really do think a happy medium would be to allow complaints to be handed in at a police commission.
Yeah, I just made a note to myself, Jessica, is if the complaint is about a specific employee, it must be submitted in writing. And I can check with Bertram and see if he thinks that flies constitutionally.
And so the only thing I would say to that is, that's actually a violation of our civilian complaint procedure established by the state of Connecticut, right? Because complaints can come in any format, not just written. And so I would hate to have the commission tell the public that the only way they could submit a complaint to the agency of which you're the top box
During the
of.
meetings.
This is a complaint being submitted to the commission, not to the department, to the commission in a public meeting.
Right, but I submit that the commission has to follow the same civilian complaint procedures as the department does, as set by a regulatory authority, because our employees, let me finish. if you
No,
don't mind.
you're debating next.
No, I'm debating this one right now, right? Because you want to receive a complaint in writing.
I don't want to receive a complaint right
And
now.
our
I want somebody to
employees-
stand up and say what they want to say.
Our employees have a right to have complaints about their job performance processed in a certain manner. If they're wrong, they're going to be disciplined. But before we decide that, it has to be received in a proper manner. The public comment about poor job performance is it's unacceptable.
But it wouldn't be like a public comment, like they would literally say, hey, I'm Steve Jobs from Hillcrest Lane. I have a complaint that I'm handing to the police commission. It's just like an email. Here's an email and then we'll forward it to you right then and there. I mean, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, it does. I personally don't want to receive complaints here at the meeting, but how would this be in terms of work performance if in the first line of number 4, the commission encourages speakers not to make offensive statements about work performance or to engage in personal attacks against individuals?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that encompasses what
And
we're
then-
trying to get.
And then
if
end
somebody-
it there, Carol, is that what you mean? Like that would be the end of it? That would be all of number 4?
No, that's an addition, 3 words about work performance. But if someone stands up and says, you know, officer number 2732, then shove. Not allowed.
It's already out there.
Right, and so.
Well, yeah, but
So it's great for the commission, right? So let's play this forward for a second. Let's say the commission chooses to adopt something that allows this to happen, right? And someone does that, and now we're in the adjudication process of employee discipline. At least if your bylaws read correctly, you can show that as an example that we try to refrain public speakers from making negative comments about job performance. As opposed to the person that has been disciplined adjudicated saying, you didn't give me a fair shot from the start. You allowed people to come here and say negative things about my job performance. And now look at where I am because public opinion took a hold before I had my due process rights exhausted, right? So by allowing this, you violated my due process. I'm trying to set dialogue up for the commission. They want to change their bylaws to make sure that they can show the employee that they've done everything they can to protect their due process rights, to protect their property interests. And the current bylaw proposal, I believe, does the opposite. And I know it's concerning, right? So you're hearing from me tonight. I'm sure you will hear from others, but I'm trying to get this to be a little bit more of a collaborative discussion to see this through the employee's eyes. So this is not allowed anywhere else, right? So why is that?
Well, the answer as to why that is that, you know, I raised it, given my understanding of First Amendment law, and Mr. Bertram agreed with me, given his understanding of First Amendment law.
So there's a reason why Labor Council wrote this in the first place a certain way for the Board of Education. So in 2009, all the police commission did was contact council, and they said, the best one written, which by the way, was not by town council, which was by Board of Ed council at that time, is this for public speaking.
That does not match what I have. The one, you keep on referring to the fact that Board of Ed, you modeled it after Board of Ed.
We did in 2009, they might have changed it
No,
since
it's
2009.
absolutely changed on the one I have right in front of me.
What does it talk about?
It says, speakers are required to refrain from presentations that discuss specific employees of the Board of Education, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or by another reference that tends to identify an individual. Members of the public are encouraged to submit commendations, comments, charges, or complaints concerning specific employees to an appropriate administrator or to the Board of Ed.
Perfect, that's perfect language.
Exactly what the.
So if you adopted that language, I would have zero issue with that. That's the first time I just heard it.
The Department of Police Services.
That protects the employees' rights, their due process rights and their property interest.
Yes, but there's not the word negative in the.
Fine, I think that takes care of everything.
I mean, the word negative is the thing that just really gets me to the core
Mhm.
in the original one. You know, I just don't find that at all appealing. So,
So the reason why I think the word negative was in there is no one is going to make a complaint that their due process rights were violated if someone pays them a compliment. Right, so I'm sure that's why it was
but you
delineated that way.
cannot tell the public what they can and can't say.
Of course not, you can,
comments.
but you can control your meeting, which is what that paragraph that you just read does for the Board of Education. So if the police commission wanted to adopt something like that, I think that that certainly protects the employee. I mean, I'd love to hear it one more time or see it in writing, but from what I just heard, that sounds like it's a they're exactly addressing the issue that I raised.
They're pretty much identical.
Is that in the thing
a
that you
negative-
handed out? I'm sorry.
Yeah, in a negative manner isn't in the board, but to the, all right, the last paragraph of the original, to the extent members of the public have concerns about personnel, they are encouraged to bring them to the attention of the chief, or they
The department.
prefer through written communication to the commission chairperson. So they could bring it here and.
Yeah, I just think we should be transparent with the public in that if you hand shove an envelope during the meeting or after the meeting, and it's a complaint about personnel, Chubb hands it to me. So if you feel more comfortable giving them, fantastic, but it should be transparent that it just comes right back to the department.
Was there a reason why Burcham decided not to put that piece of it in about, bringing complaints? That the appropriate way to make a complaint is a certain way to do it?
Well, now, if we're going to complaints, that's next month.
Yeah,
So
no, but that's,
I'm
yeah, but
reluctant to
Well, I don't think we're going to complaints. I
We're
think we're
not.
talking about what should get referred to that versus what should take place in public comment.
And I
Right.
mean, number 4 talks about, is basically saying if you have a complaint, you can say it in public comment.
It doesn't say that there's anything about complaints, and in the original red line one that you kept referring to, it says speakers are requested to refrain.
Right.
But requested to refrain doesn't mean you can't do it, so.
But
We're
the
saying
chairman,
here, encourage us not to make offensive statements about work performance or to engage in personal attacks upon individuals, the extent to which blah, 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 for the rest of the paragraph.
yeah,
So the original one didn't say you can't do it totally, but it also didn't,
it asks the public to refrain, which puts the chairman in charge to gavel and say no.
so does this.
Right.
accept.
But number 6 here, that now I'm seeing that, I guess, Jessica, you have a copy of this, thank you. That's what you just read was this number 6. That captures everything, quite frankly.
It's very similar. Requested and required, those are different. In a negative manner was added for the police services. I mean, everything else is the same up until to the extent.
I gotta be honest, everything that they have under public address, we could almost adopt it, because the other piece that's, which I didn't think of until I read this, was for somebody who's not familiar with public meetings, I'm going to public comment and I'm gonna complain about the speeders on Main Street, and we go, and that might feel bad to the public who doesn't understand its comment, and it's not a dialogue, and the Board of Ed's number Where is it?
Well, we have that in our bylaws
That should
right
be
now.
ours, yeah.
Where, yeah, that is in the
Is that still- okay.
bylaws. Anyway. Says, at no time will the police commission permit public comment or engage in discussion during public comment portion of a meeting concerning an active investigation, so it's a little.
Oh, that's just active investigation as opposed to just generally,
you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So if we replaced number 4 with this number 6, obviously changing the words education. Does that seem to accomplish everyone's goal? I mean, it certainly addresses the concerns that I raised.
I mean, I like the word request. It's really literally the same thing as the original, except speakers are requested, changed from required.
If it
And then
literally
we added
is, then it would
in
be
a-
exactly the same.
Okay, do you have comments on how you like?
No, we've gone over this a million times. I
We
we,
have gone over it, but we haven't done this. We haven't.
that's because we canceled our December meeting. There've been a million stall tactics. I'm sorry. If we keep changing this, then we're having a special meeting in February so we can read through them again and then vote on them in February. Did nobody else seem to think that this is insane that we keep hashing this out over
We
and over
haven't
again?
hashed it out.
Last time we were here, Joe said, as long as I get something from the lawyer that says that this is legal, he was on board with some of it.
That's
So
not what I said.
Yeah, they
Okay.
haven't even looked at it or anything.
So folks,
why did nobody get these bylaws? We've had them around a million times. I just,
Because we can't discuss it until we're together. We're just together and discussing it. We're having
but
appropriate.
it's, I didn't
Positive
even email the
discourse.
dog with my homework. I mean, it's just, it's exhausting. It's mentally.
We're doing it
draining.
right finally. This all started the wrong way. Now we're doing it the right way. And doing it the right way is more important than getting it done.
And I'll be honest, I've been in police commission meetings for over 10 years. I've never once heard somebody stand up and name somebody by name unless it was me or Rich Metzak, who are both members of the police commission.
And why did it need to change? That's where I'm going.
For those of
Because
negative.
they- But no, what I'm saying is, people were they were allowed to say negative comments about police commissioners, they just never were able to say it because everyone shut them down, and I don't think that's right. If people have a complaint, they have a complaint, if they have a comment, they have a comment. What are we so afraid of?
It's not about being afraid, it's due process. If you
Believe
literally
me, you don't have to explain due process to me. You do not have to explain due process to me.
so
not.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can bring us back just a little bit. So, sure. Look, this is the first time that the commission is really investing some time to specifically have discussions about changing a bylaw. That's healthy. I don't think, my opinion, especially in concert with one of my goals this year, I don't think we should spend time hashing out what happened in the past. I think we should spend time moving forward together, which is what is happening tonight.
Yes.
Because this is the first time that all members of the commission, and thank you, you're allowing me to be included. It's the first time that we're all collaborating, and actually having a discussion together. And I think that we're hearing some very interesting viewpoints from different people, right? We're having a good discussion, which is great. And so, Joe, you just mentioned how you felt that other one was negative. And so, again, I don't think it's negative. We were stopping negative comments about job performance.
Appreciated.
So what if we take out in a negative manner? We just. cross it out.
No.
So here's the big difference between our original and number 6 on the Board of Ed. Because number 6 on the Board of Ed doesn't say positive or negative. It just not talking about their work either way. So that addresses the First Amendment issue. We're just not talking about specific individuals, and you're encouraged to put it right and follow procedure, whatever it might be, pluses and minuses.
So cross out in a negative.
So
manner.
I think I personally, I would like to adopt that language, just change a few words.
The language that's in the Board of Ed policy.
Yeah, because it gets us, I think, on the right path. And it addresses the freedom of speech piece, because we're not talking about individuals in any way. We're not saying positive, we're not saying negative, and we're encouraging people to follow a process and put things in writing.
And we're saying if they do have a complaint, submit it to the administration or to the commission.
Or if we wanted to tighten this language tonight, follow the complaint procedure. We're going to create a complaint procedure, follow appropriate procedures. We may not be ready to specify that tonight. To your point, you don't want to go there tonight. But I think the language here could say, follow the, right?
Yeah, and I like the fact how in the same sentence, it talks about accommodations, comments, charges, or complaints. Right, everything's on
It
equal
covers the
footing.
waterfront.
Yeah, it's on equal footing.
So what about the original one, the to the extent sentence?
Well,
I think that has to go away if you're adopting 6.
I think you replace Board of Ed 6 without 4.
Yeah, and obviously you have to check out the Board of Education.
But that's basically the same thing as our original, just minus to the extent.
no, it's not.
No, it's
different.
it is different because it doesn't talk about, it puts everything on even footing, I guess is another way to put it. And so I would be comfortable with this, as the administrator of the police department. I think just equally protects the employees' rights.
Okay, what was your sentence again? Follow appropriate?
No, I think we can just use this, because we are going to have an appropriate public, citizen complaint policy when we get there.
Right, and again, I don't want to get too far, but I need commissioners to understand that there is a statewide complaint procedure that the department is mandated to follow. Like we won't get accredited in tier 1 if we don't follow that, right?
We understand that.
And so we can't ask our employees to be subject to a separate type of policy. I know that's coming next month. But for the sake of this, I think that you should refer it to the department's complaint procedure.
So I would parallel the language again, because it's talking about accommodations, comments, charges, or complaints concerning specific employees to the chief of police and or the police commission under provisions of the complaint, under provisions of, you want to.
I would even take that out.
Just take it
So
out.
don't even talk about the complaint procedure.
Okay.
Just say, submit to the chief of police or the police commission.
Done.
Knowing that if the police commission receives a complaint,
We're gonna automatically.
it
follow
has
that.
to come to me. If it doesn't, that's a whole separate issue. But this makes 6 neutered of that, what that procedure actually is. And I would also submit that I know that when I go to some other commission meetings, they post their public address policy on the back of their agenda. So members of the public, in case the chair has to refer to it, or if they get there, to Joe's point, and they want to say something, they read the policy, oh, okay, not the place, not the time. Maybe that's what we do as well.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, 3 more pieces of paper.
Hopefully it goes on the back. We'll get double sided.
We have, we already have a double-sided agenda.
Well, I'm hoping that in time, we won't, right? At some point, I think we'll all be on a path where we won't have a 3-page agenda.
So where do we go now? Next steps?
Poor Carol keeps raising her hand. She's the most
I
polite one in
know,
the
she
room.
really is.
I just wanted to say that, from my viewpoint, I think we had a discussion last month. Okay, so I take issue with that. This number 6 sounds good. Do you want job performance or performance in there? It doesn't say that. Or do you just, is it fine without it?
I think it's fine without it, only because when I read this, it's saying, don't talk about employees.
About specific employees, Megan.
Right. And so if someone starts saying, officer so-and-so, you get to gavel and say, I'm sorry, under number 6, here are your options. And obviously the onus is on you, Mr. Chairman, to do that, right? We have to have faith that you're gonna follow it. There you go, you got it, and you're ready to go.
So the number 4 doesn't allow for the gavel?
What's that?
So the new number 4 doesn't allow for the gavel?
Sure it does.
Okay.
I think the language in 6 is more comprehensive.
I wish I had seen
Specifically
this.
positive or
I
negative.
wish I had seen the language in 6 when we started this problem.
I didn't know it until Jill read it, and then the captain slid this over and said, look at number 6.
From a FOIA viewpoint, the changes, that were made and sort of, agreed to, not totally agreed to, but the changes that were made and came out positive in discussion, can they be submitted to the members of the commission via email, so that in February, we can vote on these.
Oh, I think I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump the gun. I think you guys should finalize language tonight
Yeah.
that sits and gets voted on next time, if everyone's in the right place. I would not delay
That's-
that. I would
that's what I-
wordsmith this paragraph
That's what I.
and get it
wanna
done. Yeah, absolutely.
So do we need another legal opinion to make sure we're in line?
know.
Personally, I would
don't
say
think
no
so.
to that, only because Board of Ed vets this through like 100 lawyers. I mean, I'm exaggerating, of course,
Not by much.
but this is, but, you know, this probably came from the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, you know, and they just massaged it for their own purposes. So I would say that it probably has been vetted legally.
I guess I would just like to, if Jen wants to read back exactly where the changes are.
I don't think Jen knows that.
I can
Well,
But I think, I think-
But it would be nice.
I think Jill's got it.
Yes, I can tell you
Sorry.
what
I-
it
I
is.
think that's-
Whatever. Whatever.
It's the speakers are required to refrain from presentations that discuss specific employees of the police.
Department of Research Services.
See, she doesn't have it. I have it.
All right, do you?
You're so competitive, my goodness.
Always.
Regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or by another reference that tends to identify an individual. Members of the public are encouraged to submit commendations, comments, charges, or complaints concerning specific employees to the chief of police or police commission.
Or to the police commission.
Yes.
I think you can get rid of the word charges, because I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
I would,
mean.
my only suggestion would delete charges. I think complaints covers any type of, complaint.
And instead of employee, you'd be police officer, right? Or?
No.
No, employees, any employee of the agency.
Somebody says I called them, the dispatcher was inattentive to my problem.
What if somebody has a complaint about how dirty the floor is?
Absolutely, that's fine. So listen, under this, someone can come and say, all cops suck. Thank you.
Perfect.
Fine, that's their First Amendment right to do so. This protects the property interests of our employees. And so I think if you vote it to have the revision to paragraph number 4 be exactly what the secretary just read, I think that that is a fine enhancement. And if you do it tonight, you can vote on it next meeting.
Then what happens to the sentence about, we welcome positive, blah, blah,
It's
Yeah.
gone because we've neutralized everything.
I would still put it up front.
Then that's a decision you guys have to
So
make.
how do you want to word that again? The upfront one?
Um,
And where?
there's the-
Here, you want to- this is our-
underline part at the top, at the very beginning of the bio.
I think, I don't think it's necessary because you're
It
addressing it.
probably is no longer necessary.
Right, because you're saying it down below.
Accommodations, comments, complaints.
So I'm, okay, go ahead.
Okay. The reason I like it up front as well
Okay.
is we are encouraging people to come in and give us both positive and negative feedback. And that's what public comment is for.
So where would you exactly insert that? Just
So
so
I
I
make up the very first sentence under the heading, public comment, conduct and procedure.
And how would it read?
The police commission welcomes input from the public, comma, both positive and negative, period.
And then the police commission may
may
permit
permit.
any.
Yeah.
I have
Right.
no issue with that.
Can you just say that one more time? The police,
The police commission welcomes input from the public, comment, both positive and negative, period.
Since I already have this on my computer,
I'm doing
maybe
it
I'll
right
make
now.
the changes
Okay.
and send it around.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah, it should be posted.
Yeah.
Let's,
Obviously, you have to vote on that.
we're not voting, but let's take a straw poll. Renee, I'm good with this. Are you good with this?
I just still don't really understand the logic of then tying people's hands and now saying that they can't say certain things. I don't understand it. But I want these bylaws moved.
Jessica, you're good?
Yes.
Paul?
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Yes, I'm fine.
Yep, I'll go for it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And so might I suggest, just for process, you do need a vote.
Right.
For those specific amendments. So under item 4 of this, discussion possible action to refer the public comment procedure and bylaw change to the next regular meeting. So I would just say with amendments, agreed upon. Does that make sense to everybody?
So you're looking for a motion.
I think you need a motion to codify that you're swapping out 4 with what the secretary just read, and you're adding the first sentence of what the chairman just said. And then you vote on that, you lock that in now, and then your action on adopting that will be at the next meeting. Does
Can
that
I
make
just
sense?
say so moved?
I guess, yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Got that,
Jen,
Jen?
you got that?
And you'll forward the actual.
Yes, I
Okay.
will
Second.
second.
Any further discussion?
I just have one thing. So to make it clear, just so the public realizes, they're not gonna be allowed to come and say, they can say negative things about some things, but they can't ever about somebody's performance. I understand, we've already said they can't say names. So really, their only outlet to make a complaint is to send it to the police department. Or
Or
us.
commit-
Or the police commission.
But you send it to the police commission, what did the chief say? It then has to be turned
Yeah.
over to him.
Because they deal with it.
Okay.
We don't deal with
No,
it.
I'm just saying, I just want the public to be aware of that, that's what we're deciding. You think they're aware?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because I mean, they can plaster it all over social media, yet they don't come here.
And that's how it is in every.
Do you know somebody who has a complaint that wants to speak out publicly, Renee?
You
No,
know,
I
it
don't
gives
think so. No, it hasn't happened.
That's why I can do it.
Okay, can you call this?
Call the question.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, signify by
Do
saying
we have
aye.
a second?
Yes.
Let me
yes,
look that
yes.
up. Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
unanimous.
Can you say that was really good work by everyone here? That was very, very great work. Thank you.
So now I make a motion, we move this to the next regular meeting and vote on it.
You just did that.
Oh, we didn't get that too? No.
Okay, let's go
Make
to
sure
the
all on the up and up.
police commission correspondence bylaw. This one really is intended to correct a technical glitch in the current bylaw. The current bylaw, if you read it carefully, is limited to correspondence to commissioners that comes to the police department. We have email that comes directly to us. We have email that comes to us at town hall. And our policy, our bylaw has to deal with that as well. So all that this bylaw does is say, no matter where it comes in, if it's addressed to the commissioners, it goes to the commissioners. And if it's addressed to an individual commissioner, it still goes to the commissioners. So that's the purpose.
If it's helpful, I'd be more than happy to read my comments. Last time that generated good discussion.
Well, let's.
Yes,
let's-
yes, it was your comments.
Well, no, what I'm saying is it was no, and then collaborative discussion.
Yeah, let's start with that. Let's try it a different way.
Let's, sure, we'll start.
Just for, so again, I'll read this into the record and then give you a copy. So as the commission considered changing its police commission correspondence bylaw, I offer the following comments for your consideration. I respectfully request that my thoughts be considered as your current proposal impacts the department's employees and operation. Again, I'll list everything at the end. The proposal eliminates much of the current language, and while brevity is applauded, I believe perhaps too much has been trimmed. I concur with the inclusion of email as a positive enhancement. I think it's first important to discuss who the current or future police commission correspondence bylaw governs. The bylaws of the Old Saybrook Police Commission govern only the commission itself. In other words, a police commission bylaw cannot direct or assign responsibilities to anyone other than the members of its own commission. The four corners of the bylaw document can only apply to the elected members of the police commission. It seems that the purpose of this bylaw should be to detail how communication in any form is received, reviewed, forwarded, and archived. First, I would recommend that the police commission direct me on how you would like the police department to manage correspondence in any form that is addressed to a commissioner or to the commission as a whole that happens to be received by the department. I share the following suggested language in a letter from the police commission to me. Chief Spiro, from time to time, an individual police commissioner or the police commission may receive correspondence, electronic or hard copy, at the police department. To meet our obligations to the public, we must establish an agreement on how correspondence intended for us is handled when received by the department in the most efficient manner. We ask that you establish written procedures that accomplish this goal to share with the commission. Specifically, should the police department be in receipt of a communication intended for an individual police commissioner, we ask that you cause notification to the police commissioner and arrange for the delivery or pickup of said communication. If the communication is addressed to the commission and there are enough copies or it is in electronic form, we ask that you cause notification to the commission and arrange for the delivery and pickup of said communication. If there is only one tangible piece of correspondence that is addressed to the police commission, please communicate the presence of and delivery to the police commission chairman. Each of these actions must occur without unreasonable delay. Finally, there may be times when individual police commissioners or the commission as a whole receives correspondence that pertains to operational matters that we will forward to you. We ask that when doing so, you cause the sender to learn that their correspondence has been received, and if appropriate, notify the commission at its next regular meeting of any actions you have taken with respect to the correspondence. Now that the commission has formally advised me of how correspondence should be managed when received by the department, your new bylaw can be specific to how police commissioners, not the police department, manages and archives correspondence. The bylaw should first establish the official mailing address and the official email address of the commission. As an example, for purposes of receiving mail, the official mailing address of the police commission shall be the Old Saybrook Town Hall, 302 Main Street, Old Saybrook, Connecticut, 06475. The official email address for the commission shall be police.commission@oldsaybrookct.gov. Then the bylaw should require specific actions from commissioners based on the nature of correspondence received. I suggest the following language. Correspondence that pertains to operational matters, personnel, traffic, criminal complaints, matters under adjudication, vendor solicitation, etc., should be forwarded to the police chief without unreasonable delay. Other correspondence received should be shared with all commission members and be saved for discussion at the next public meeting of the commission. Finally, the bylaw should address public record retention. You may choose to have it read, all correspondence reviewed and or sent by a police commissioner or the police commission must be forwarded to the police commission clerk for archiving in accordance with state record retention laws. Directing me on how to handle correspondence intended for a police commissioner or the police commission received by the department establishes the guidelines desired by the commission in a proper format, not within a bylaw. The police commission correspondence bylaw can now focus on establishing official mailing addresses, what commissioners must do when receiving correspondence, and how correspondence must be archived with respect to the law. I respectfully request that the police commission consider these suggestions as you enhance this bylaw. And obviously all the copies. Yeah. You get the first one?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
The current bylaws, when correspondence is addressed to the commission and received at the department, then the commission clerk, Jen, forwards it to the commissioners. instead of saying it addressed to them at the police services building, the department shall promptly notify the addressees. We changed the department to the commission clerk, just to mirror the current language.
Right, so my point is, no one has to follow that works at the police department. No one has to follow a police commission bylaw. So if a dispatcher, someone walks in and hands a dispatcher an envelope for the police commission, you should be directing me to create a policy that tells employees what to do and how to handle your mail. That's not part of the bylaw because I don't have to follow your bylaws because I'm not an elected member of the commission.
Yeah.
But you certainly have the right to send me a communication asking me to do something that's lawful and legal, which has to do with your mail. And that takes that out of the bylaw, right? So you would send me some iteration of what I read, and then I would come to the meeting and go, hey, by the way, here's the policy that we created. And you can be like, well, that doesn't accomplish what we want,
But if we just have our bylaw read, the commission clerk, so promptly notify the addressee, our commission clerk is our commission clerk. She's also, an employee of the department, but she gets paid for being our commission clerk.
But you didn't work 24
Yeah,
hours.
I was
a
gonna say,
day.
for practical matter, if something comes on a Friday afternoon, we could get it a lot sooner if the department is responsible and not one individual. That's-
Right, it will still go,
Practical standpoint.
but that could be part of our department policy.
Right, but that doesn't mean it has to be part of our bylaw. So,
I'm saying it shouldn't be part of your bylaw. Yeah,
right,
I'm saying all of that should come out of your bylaw.
no, but the only thing that I'm concerned about is what is in the bylaw. We can craft instructions, or requests, however to phrase it, to the police department as to what the police department does when it gets something addressed to a commission.
And I understand that. What I'm trying to do is take you through the full gamut of handling police commission correspondence, right? So one is what happens if it shows up at the department? You're telling me, here's what we'd like, make a rule, done. Doesn't have to be part of the bylaw. Now, in your bylaw, you say, okay, if you want it, you start off. So, right, these are public. So if someone goes, picks up a copy of your bylaws and they look under police commission correspondence, the first paragraph says, hey, you want to mail us something? Here's our mailing address. You want to email us something? Here's our email address. Yeah, that's in other places on the World Wide Web, but it's not in your bylaws, right? So first you establish your official addresses. I think that's positive and can't hurt you there.
Well, it's on our website.
But maybe I'm not on the web. Maybe I go and I read this at the library. I don't know. What I'm saying, it doesn't hurt, right? And it certainly codifies it from changing because the commission itself would have to change it.
Okay, here's one where my personal view is you're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be, and I'm trying to keep it simple. And I appreciate that sometimes brevity is a soul of wit, and sometimes brevity is a mistake. But on this one, I think what we've got here is any correspondence goes to everybody on the commission, and a copy goes to the recording clerk. And the obvious purpose of that is for her to archive it.
But it doesn't say this, right? So if someone said, what is the commission's archiving procedure with correspondence? I'd like you to be able to open up your bylaws and go right there. And we don't have that. So I don't think it's making it more complicated. I think it's making it more comprehensive.
So what he's saying is like, if addressed to them at the police service building, the department shall promptly notify the addressee.
I'm changing the department to the commission clerk shall promptly notify the addressee. That's my suggestion.
Right, but I think what he's saying is, all right, so if there's correspondence, the town hall, police commissioners can pick them up at the town hall, or police commissioners may be contacted by the commission clerk.
If it comes into town hall right now, Carl Fortuna or his secretary gives the addressee a call. That's what happens.
Not necessarily. That's not true.
That's what
Because Jen comes over a couple times a week to check to see if there's any correspondence to the commission. Right? So if correspondence comes in, it might get stuck in the police commission mailbox. You might not necessarily get a call. You might get a call from your clerk saying there's communication to be picked up.
Recall ever getting a call from Jen that there's a communication to be picked up. It's always been from town hall.
Well, I don't know. I think your Christmas card came to town hall.
Maybe that came to the police building.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think there's been times that stuff has been mailed here and we've distributed it to the commission or the chairman.
Or not. We've had the town hall.
Excuse me?
Call us
Or
before.
not.
No, it's not true, Renee. It's just not true.
But 302 Main Street, that's the address here. So if it comes here, I thought we've already clarified this, that they were to get in touch with us and tell us that we had the mail after the whole debacle last time.
Which
Yeah.
they have, the town hall.
Which they. I understand the need for a clear cut policy. I just don't think it's tonight's thing.
But
That's a policy, not a bylaw.
Yeah, I don't see. I just really don't see where our bylaw has to say, here's an address, here's an email. This is how you can communicate with us. And then if it's communicated, it will then be circulated, archived. I don't know, I think it says it there. But, you know, I don't want to unnecessarily complicate a bylaw. As you say, the public is looking at them, maybe, maybe not. I do think a policy, if it's a policy could be worked out, but I think that's for another night.
Well, your policies are your bylaws. They're interchangeable, right? And so when I read this, I don't know why you have threat to personnel in there. I think that's just an odd line. If the contents of the correspondence relates to police personnel or suggests the existence of a public safety concern or threat to personnel or property of the department, the chief of police shall be notified of the correspondence. There's some stuff in there that's a little odd, right?
Actually, that was, the suggestion of Mike Cronin.
The threat to personnel.
Yeah, if the contents of the correspondence relates to police personnel or a public safety concern, tell the chief of police right away. That was Mike's suggestion. Everybody since then has agreed with it.
But if somebody writes, Joe, you're beautiful, we don't have to.
We can take that out, actually.
So my suggestion again was correspondence that pertains to operational matters, personnel, traffic, criminal complaints, matters under adjudication, vendor solicitation, etc., should be forwarded to the police chief without unreasonable delay. Other correspondence received should be shared with all commission members and be saved for discussion at the next public meeting of the commission.
Have we ever talked about that stuff at the public?
I'm sorry?
Have we ever talked about the correspondence we did at the meetings?
Well, there's correspondence on the agenda. We actually talked about this last time. And normally we just pass stuff around, but in my mind, any correspondence that you received that came to me, if it was appropriate, I would talk about, hey, remember Mrs. McGillicuddy? She sent us the letter about the stop sign on Elm Street. Here's what we did. And I think that would be handled under correspondence. And that's how I've delineated in my recommendations. So I think that's healthy. That's very transparent.
No, I think that's a separate issue.
I think it's correspondence.
It's related to correspondence, but this bylaw just talks about where it goes. And I think we're freighting it with a lot more than we need to if we make it contingent on a whole bunch of other things.
Well, what he's saying is that somebody emails us a complaint or whatever it is, that we can then talk about it. He can update us at the next, like at a meeting in public.
Sure,
So it is part of what happens to their correspondence.
sure.
Whereas right now, we just send it off to him and an email comes, updates us.
But that doesn't need to be delineated in our bylaw.
In our bylaws, we're describing what we do.
So if I'm a member of the public and I want to submit correspondence to the commission, I take a look at your bylaws maybe, I learn where to send it, and I wonder what happens there. And this tells me, this language tells me how it's handled. I don't see how that's bad.
I mean, what would you say at the meeting though? Like,
Well, it depends on what it is. There might be some stuff I cannot talk about.
okay, that's.
But there might, like the example I just gave, someone calls in a speeding concern on Elm Street, and I get to say, as you remember, we received that letter of complaint about speeders. We assigned personnel there, and oddly enough, we handed out 3 tickets, 2 warnings, and the speed box out there. And then you're like, okay, so you've addressed the citizen's concern that came to us, wasn't our thing to handle. So we gave it to you, you handled it, and we reported back. I think
To
that's
your
healthy.
credit, you're already doing that via email to the commissioners, but you are doing that. It isn't to the public, but then and again, do we need to know about every speed bump or every person you stop because they, are going 5 miles over the speed limit and send in some kind of a complaint about it? I'm not sure we need to know that. I'm also not sure that, in my mind, you can have a policy and you can have a bylaw. And establishing a good policy is okay. And maybe what the police commission correspondence needs to say is somewhere in there, according to the policy set forth, or something along those lines. And we work on the policy.
I like the inclusion of something that talks about the archiving retention piece, that's, I think that's a smart decision to add. I guess I don't disagree that perhaps the addresses are not necessary, but it certainly lends a level of professionalism to the document. There's no harm in doing that.
So, Joe, it could say in the second paragraph, and to the recording clerk of the commission for archival purposes or legal archival purposes. Would you go along with that?
Well, as long as we have something in there.
So we changed the title to police commission correspondence. We took out procedure.
What?
Like we took out the public comment, conduct and procedure. The procedure is like the archiving and what is done and so forth.
This is also what-
Let me make a suggestion. In the first paragraph, we change the department to the commission clerk. In the second paragraph.
I'm sorry, first and second paragraph of what?
The
Of the chief's recommendation or the blue?
police commission
Okay,
correspondence.
just want to make sure we're doing the same thing. Okay.
In the second paragraph, end of the first sentence, we insert for archival after recording clerk of the commission. Then we strike if the contents, the sentence that reads, if the contents of the correspondence. And we replace it with the chief's language. Correspondence that pertains to operational matters, personnel, traffic, criminal complaints, matters under adjudication, vendor solicitation, etc., shall be forwarded to the police chief without unreasonable delay. And then strike the word other and replace it with all. All correspondence received should be shared with all commission members. I don't think we need to deprive the other commissioners from receipt.
I think the intent, correct me if I'm wrong, chief, I think the intent of that was to say that other stuff that's not that stuff goes to everybody because we're going to discuss it.
Yeah.
At a meeting as opposed to
Yeah.
discussing it being. I think that was the intent of it.
Yeah, but I think, I want to make clear that all correspondence received should be shared with all commission members.
And you're saying that that sentence goes in on the very last sentence of
This would
this.
replace the very last sentence
Yes, okay.
in the current, in the blue version.
I'm in a different place.
If we're gonna try to get a consensus tonight, so we can make a motion to bring it forward for a vote in
Yes.
February. What are we bringing forth?
I don't know.
Yeah, you better read it.
This one's harder to follow than the last one. Okay.
And it should be. It's less,
There are only 3 changes.
Okay,
In the first paragraph, fourth line of the blue version, under the heading Police Commission Correspondence, strike the word department and replace it with the two words commission clerk.
Yeah, got that one.
In the next paragraph, at the end of the very first sentence in the paragraph, after the word commission, insert for archival, period.
Say that one more time, Joe. I'm sorry, I lost you.
Second paragraph.
No, second paragraph, first sentence. No matter how received, the recipient shall cause a copy to be circulated to the full commission and to the recording clerk of the commission for archival.
Would you be willing to add in accordance with state record retention law?
Yeah.
That way that
Sure.
can change based on the law and not your bylaw.
Great idea.
No problem.
In accordance with state.
Record retention laws.
That's fine.
So if it goes missing, Jen, it's your fault.
Can we clean up the next sentence just a little bit?
The next sentence comes out.
Well, that's bad.
It gets replaced with.
We'll get through.
But it gets replaced with,
Yours.
with your sentence.
Got it.
Well,
Not bad.
Which is,
your two sentences.
Which is correspondence that pertains to operational matters, parentheses, personnel, traffic, criminal complaints, matters under adjudication, vendor solicitation, etc., and the paren should be forwarded to the police chief without reasonable delay.
Unreasonable delay. Yeah.
Unreasonable delay, thank you. All
No,
correspondence,
yes, that's right. All correspondence received.
all correspondence received should be
No,
shared
back.
with all commission members and be saved for discussion at the next public meeting of the commission.
I think that is simple, short, sweet.
I'm fine with those there. Sounds good.
so what is that, this whole thing?
So I wonder, yes, that whole thing.
Jill, do you think you can read that all into the record so at least we can capture it if we have to write it later?
Yes, I
Is that
can.
okay? Would you mind?
Okay, it's police commission correspondence. Correspondence addressed to one or more commissioners or to quote the commission or quote commissioners may be initially addressed to them at town hall at the Department of Police Services building or to one or more individual commissioners at their email or post office addresses. If addressed to them at the Police Services building, the commission clerk shall promptly notify the addressees that mail awaits them and may be picked up at the dispatch window. Mail addressed to quote commissioners or quote the commission shall be treated as though it were addressed to each of the commissioners. No matter how received, the recipient shall cause a copy to be circulated to the full commission and to the recording clerk of the commission for archival in accordance with state record retention law. Correspondence that pertains to operational matters, quote, parentheses, personnel, traffic, criminal complaints, matters under adjudication, vendor solicitation, etc., end of paren, should be forwarded to the police chief without unreasonable delay. All correspondence received should be shared with all commission members and be saved for discussion at the next public meeting of the commission.
That is excellent. I have one minor request. Instead of saying dispatch window from the 1970s, can we just say the department?
From the department.
Yeah, so in other words, you come to the building. Dispatch
Yes.
window sounds like Starsky and Hutch is going to do.
Hey, what's wrong with that? I have a grandchild.
Just at the department instead of the dispatch window.
I hate to
No
say
objection
this
to that.
after we've pretty much agreed, but is Jen still gonna go to town hall and pick stuff up, or do we have to say?
But that's different. 'cause
That's
That's
right.
their
That's-
behavior, not our behavior.
That's the regulation piece of this.
Yeah. We get your mail, you're gonna get it. That's kind of the bottom.
That's a procedural thing that they will handle.
Okay, thank you.
I invite a motion that as amended,
So moved.
the police commission correspondence bylaw
Oh,
be
sorry.
referred to the next meeting for action.
So moved.
Second,
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous. Let's take a short recess.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. It's true, my spirit. Oh, years, decades.
We are all here. Let's resume. Last in tonight's discussion of bylaw changes is the proposed amendment to the bylaw striking the investigation of personnel related matters in the current bylaw and replacing it with a bylaw titled Responsibility of Commissioners to Inform Themselves. The purpose of this is to replace what is currently a strictly negative statement, thou shalt not investigate personnel related complaints, with something that is much more positive. The reason for this is the two problems in the current one. The first is that what is an investigation is a very ambiguous and slippery subject. If somebody comes up to one of us and says, I have a complaint, and you ask, what is it? Is that an investigation? If somebody says, I was mistreated by an officer, and you say, what happened? Is that an investigation? I think rather than try to define what an investigation is, it's better to say, let's keep ourselves informed, but remind ourselves of what we have to be careful about. The whole purpose of the no investigation is to have commissioners not be disqualified if they serve in a judicial capacity or quasi-judicial capacity. And that leads to the second problem of the current bylaw. It really misstates the law. The Connecticut Supreme Court has clearly held that there is nothing improper about a police commission conducting a preliminary investigation, for example, before conducting a formal termination proceeding. In fact, the Supreme Court commended the Madison Police Commission for doing just that before commencing a formal termination proceeding involving their chief of police at the time. And the Connecticut Supreme Court has also clearly held that the standard for disqualifying a board or commission member from acting in a quasi-judicial capacity is not the appearance of impropriety standard applicable to judges. It is a much narrower requirement that the person complaining about that board or commission member sitting has to show either actual bias or actual prejudging of the issue in question. That's why the proposal instead takes this positive approach. Commissioners should keep themselves informed on all matters within their purview, and says that if you're going to be disqualified, it's because of the reasons that the law requires bias or prejudging. So that's the purpose of this amendment. And let's start with Renee. Did you have?
I have no comments.
Okay. Jessica?
So I'm confused, like, so if Carl comes to me, but you're like a normal person, you come to me and you say, I hate the chief, right? But then I'm not then going to go back to him another day and say, why did you hate the chief? Right? Does that that's investigating in my opinion. Like if somebody comes to me and gives me a complaint and then I pass it on or forward or tell you, I'm not gonna go back to that person and ask for more like details.
If somebody comes up to you and says, I hate the chief, what are you going to say? Thank you very much. Or are you going to say, why?
Hopefully not, so do I.
Well, that was funny.
It's an option, I just hope it's not
But,
chosen.
but that's during the initial conversation. I'm not gonna go back to that person like 4 days later and ask more details. Right?
I suspect not,
Okay,
but
so that to me is an investigation, when you look into it further.
See, to me, I was thinking, my idea of an investigation would be if somebody stole something out of my neighbor's garage, and instead of letting the police officers do their investigation, now I'm asking my other neighbor over there, and I'm asking, like, you're digging further and further into something that you really have no business dealing with.
Which would be the first thing I did.
Like,
I mean, that's how I relate to doing an investigation.
I don't
That's
think
all.
you investigate somebody's feelings, they're gonna say, hey, the chief, I don't know how you investigate that.
sometimes history is illuminating, and you may remember that the current bylaw was put into effect and adopted by the prior commission because I had the temerity to speak with somebody who had a complaint, and I met with them. Actually, I think I just talked with them on the phone. I just talked with them on the phone for 15 minutes, asking what happened.
But did you share that with everybody, your discussion with them? With everybody?
No.
To make it transparent?
All right, well, that's the problem.
Had already filed a complaint.
But Chuck, I don't even know that you were on the commission at that time, because
It was.
he talked to me first, and I called you for advice because you hadn't been put back on the police commission. Because I didn't know how to deal with that when I'm being given all this information and, you know, nobody's given it to me, and so I can't remember if you talked to him in between getting put back on the commission.
All I remember
But I
is,
do know that it turned into a firestorm.
all I remember, I was reprimanded for conducting an investigation. And
Yes, I
the
remember.
investigation was, I had a conversation with this guy. To me, that's not an investigation, but to other people, apparently it was. So I just want to drop the word investigation, so we're not arguing about that, and say, instead, don't take it to the point where somebody could say you are biased or you prejudge the issue. That's the legal standard.
I think the other piece that's missing from this is acting as an individual. That's not, if we're gonna talk about responsibilities of commissioners, we can't do anything individually, and that's not reflected in here.
No, I completely disagree with that. I think as individuals, we owe it to the commission and to the town to do the best we can to, you know, keep ourselves informed.
On what?
If somebody comes to us with an issue, I don't want to say, don't tell me about it, come to the commission meeting.
But you should say there's a process for this. You shouldn't be having those offline conversations without everybody else. You can't act as an individual.
Oh,
I think
Joe.
Jessica's example is a good one. It's one thing that someone comes up and vent, hey, tell me why you say that. We all have those gas pump conversations. Usually it's about the number of cops in town, let's be frank, right? But it's different. So that happens, that's fine. But it's different for me then to call a guy up and, are you still pissed off? Do you have any other neighbors who are pissed off? That is not appropriate. That's acting as an individual and not as a member of the commission. Certainly, we need to listen to our constituents and be reflective listeners and be polite and all those kinds of things. But then either they're going to follow a procedure or it's over. We cannot act as individuals.
I completely agree.
But that's missing from here.
So that's what I mean, like, I'm not gonna contact David Garavante and say, you know, what happened with the speed limit on Maple Ave? You know, I'm not gonna talk to them later on and get an update if I don't hear from them. Gee,
Can I share my thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Same format as before. Been successful so far, so we'll do that. As commissioners, as the commission considers adding the responsibilities of commissioners to inform themselves by law, I offer the following comments for your consideration. To place this communication in context, again, I'm going to list that at the end. The very title of this bylaw concerns me. It seems counterintuitive to the facts that 1, the commission is the unit of authority. 2, individual commissioners have no authority. 3, individual commissioners should not conduct investigations, even in the slightest bit. And 4, that individual police commissioners and the commission as a whole does not possess operational responsibilities. The language as presented provides an illegitimate authority to an individual elected official. It may foster rogue actions as boundaries and responsibilities are not detailed. Rather, the language leaves it to each police commissioner's self-interpretation of the laws and ordinances to govern their own individual authority. This is dangerous and most certainly not a best practice. Bylaws for the commission were established in 2009. Since that time, there has never been a need to detail responsibilities of individual police commissioners. However, perhaps it is time. I would recommend that language be inserted in the police commission bylaws following the explanation of the executive board, and that the section be entitled Responsibilities of Police Commissioners. This section can then detail police commissioner responsibilities, such as regular attendance at meetings, adherence to the bylaws, decorum at meetings, communicating with constituents, communicating with fellow commissioners, conflicts of interest, and confidentiality. It should include language concerning how to address violations of the bylaws and the censuring of a commissioner if found to be in violation. I suggested the commission review the 9000 series of the Old Saybrook Board of Education policy. I believe that this would be extremely beneficial to the current and future professionalism of the commission, which is something that we all desire. The Board of Education policy speaks to what I believe the commission is trying to accomplish. I respectfully request that the commission not adopt the proposed responsibilities of commissioners to inform themselves by law, and rather take the time to collaborate with each other and create a more comprehensive bylaw that details and governs responsibilities of commissioners for both this and future police commissions. And I have copies for you.
So if you look at this paper again, and then it's code of conduct. That this is the 9000 series. But the code of conduct. Thank you.
Joe, just real quick, a quick follow-up on that. I did not know that striking the investigation of personnel related matters was actually part of this proposal. I thought that was part of the bylaw that we're going to discuss in the future that has to deal with investigations. And so the only thing I want to point out in your opening is the Madison case, which you cite. That was a case that happened prior to the establishment of the statewide citizen complaint procedure. So that case has no bearing on current law because it's in conflict with current law.
That is one view.
Well, it's definitely like, so in other words, I can't follow that case law because since then there's been a new law. And so the new law prevails.
If there is a conflict, yes.
And there is, right? So the police commission cannot conduct a limited investigation. How investigations are done is described in the post policy.
Chief, I understand your view on that.
Yeah. It's the correct view.
Sure.
Well, no, it's the view of every police department in the state of Connecticut, Jeff. So there must be something going on. And so I think this one might take a little bit more time and thought.
I mean, you outlined kind of where the next thing I was gonna say that it, you know, I don't think it's informing themselves. I think it really is more of a job description or code of conduct. I think that's probably a better direction to take.
Well, what I'm thinking is it can be wishful thinking on my part that a bylaw is going to affect whether a commissioner acts responsibly or not responsibly, so far as I'm, as I would evaluate it, or you or any other commissioners.
Sure, but there's
So-
some,
So,
Sorry, go ahead,
let me finish the thought. If my proposal is wishful thinking, my concern about the slipperiness of the idea of what's an investigation can be solved by going back to where the bylaws were before that amendment was introduced, 2 years ago or however long ago it was, and we could accomplish my goal just by repealing that bylaw.
So let's say we have a new commissioner, someone we don't know. Under this language, they would decide what their authority is, what an investigation is, the meaning of that word.
No, we're taking it out.
No, just hear me out. Based on their own interpretation of statute and ordinances. That's not good. There needs to be a standard. And so under your latest proposal, I do not believe you should strike the fact that commissioners should not conduct personnel investigations and leave it to that they can, based on their own definition of what an investigation is. And so far tonight, we've heard 2 or 3 different variations of what an investigation might be. That's unhealthy for personnel. It's unhealthy for this commission.
Well, I think if it was removed altogether,
I'm
it
sorry.
wouldn't even- I think you're right. If it was just removed altogether, it wouldn't even be a thing.
Then what says you
Like this
can't
makes it a thing.
investigate?
But I mean, that doesn't go through my mind. Like if somebody comes,
Your mind, but it went through Chubb's when he had a 15-minute conversation, right? You brought it up, and that was not shared with the commission. So there's 2 different viewpoints on what an investigation is. And what I'm saying is you should standardize that.
We need to really further define investigations.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, investigations in this particular instance means I shouldn't be talking to my neighbor
No, I disagree.
and, or a friend, or any, because what parameters does it become investigating? And I wouldn't want to be accused of conducting an investigation if it's heard that I've had conversations with my neighbor or my friend about certain things. So that needs to be, I think, a tightly defined, that word, as opposed to, I don't know, I don't like the original bylaw at all. Because I do agree, I watched while this was happening, how this ended up here because of situations and about certain people on the commission having done certain things, and all of a sudden we now have a bylaw on it. I do agree that we probably need to broaden responsibilities, and I do like what the Board of Ed has done here. I don't know if censure, as far as I'm concerned, should be part of that bylaw. But I do think that we should be adhering to all board policies, conduct themselves in a fair and impartial manner. I do think at a later date, we need to take a look at doing that. But as far as I'm concerned now, if we don't carry the new one, I would like to see the old one gone.
the old one what?
The old one, the one that's here in the bylaws.
So to your point about investigation needs to be a little bit more narrowly defined.
Right.
I think that it's a more healthy of a path to keep that there and let's define that and then change that. Because it's not hurting the operation now. But I agree, it needs to be better defined. So in my mind, your neighbor, your best friend calls you, texts you, knocks on the door and said, I was just pulled over by so-and-so. It was the most horrible experience I've ever had. And you say, oh my God, what happened? The cop was swearing and yelling and da-da-da-da. That's not an investigation. What you do with that information next is what matters. If you ask the next question and then the next question, that's an investigation. If you say, I'm telling the chief about this. Perfect. And now you have enough knowledge at some point to ask me, hey, whatever happened with that? Or you'll hear a report of discipline, or the matter will come in front of you. But anything more than that is definitely an investigation. In my mind, being someone who investigates these things.
Yeah. But I kind of have a problem with that, because I think my natural state of conversation would lead me to those next questions.
But now you have a higher standard that you have to adhere to.
But we also are community members,
Correct.
and we have responsibilities to our constituents, you know, and as an elected official, that's where I go. So yes, I have certain responsibilities as a commissioner, but I'm also on the other side of it.
Mhm.
So it becomes a very tricky thing.
No doubt. And so I respect that responsibility you feel like you have to your constituent. But at the same time, you also have a responsibility to make sure that you are held to that higher standard, because the last thing you'd want to do for that constituent is not be able to participate in a disciplinary hearing because you did go too far, right? So Jill, it's a very slippery slope. And I respect that. I respect that it's tough, which is why, to your point, it needs to be better defined.
So I spent time, I used to get phone calls, people come into my store, they complain. I talked to the chief before, but I explained to these people how to report this. That's where I go next, instead of asking more questions. And I had a young person that I told them I would go to the police department with them to file the report or the complaint, because they were afraid to go down. I'm like, what are you afraid of?
So here's a great example. So Jill, Jessica sends me an email that she saw someone complaining about our department on the social media app Reddit. And so a person by the name of Fecal Enthusiast wrote a whole diatribe of a negative encounter with the police department. But because a police commissioner sent that to me, I felt obligated to look into that. So I sent message, I had to download the Reddit app. Never had it, don't need it, but apparently I did now. So I downloaded the Reddit app, I became a member of that community, and I sent the Fecal Enthusiast a letter, saying who I was, that I saw what I, saw what he posted, and that if he wanted to contact me to make a complaint or have me look into it further, I needed specific details so I could do that, because his complaint was very vague.
Well,
And so she did the right thing. And so whether it was on Reddit or it's your next door neighbor, Jessica didn't reach out to the Fecal Enthusiast and ask questions. She put it in my lap. And that's what I would expect any commissioner to do after those first couple questions.
but he named a.
He named an officer, yeah, right.
But
He hasn't responded.
Right.
So if he's listening,
I
well, for him
don't
to
know who
respond,
he is either, but.
I think that's what it is. It's those first initial questions. And then because you have that responsibility, it's love to talk to you about this more. There's a procedure. I don't want to misstep and exclude myself. This is important enough. Do you want me to call the chief? I'll go to the police station with you, right? Which is what Carl's done before.
Once,
Yeah.
I did.
But you did, right? And so I think that's certainly your responsibility to constituents.
So what if that person doesn't want to, file a complaint?
You let me know, we look into it, right? So when people come up to me and complain about the police, which, as you can imagine, from time to time, that happens, right? Not every venue I walk into is all balloons and high fives. I have an obligation to look into that. And so it might not be a full-blown internal affairs investigation, but it might be something that we look into on the cursory, and if things make sense, then it turns into an investigation. Not every time a police officer is investigated, do we have a formal complaint. There are plenty of times that I investigate police officers because I find out that they're doing something wrong. It is my job, my responsibility to police our own. And so what I'm saying, and when I say some of these things in my letters, is I'm pretty much saying, please do not interfere with my job because I want to do it well. Don't misstep, which would prevent me from doing what you actually want me to do, which is properly police our own.
I did that with Gary, that guy with the online thing. I went back and I tried to give some advice on how to fix it, and the chief corrected me. I actually responded days later. Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe just a little pause. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff tonight. Maybe just a pause button on this one to think about it a little bit more, to see if we want to get someone to define what investigation is, if there's such a definition. Maybe think about those other things in the Board of Ed policy that a few of you seem to like. I don't know.
Well, and I would suggest that we take a look at and I don't have it in front of me, the whole Bible, the introduction. I think you referred to this. Like, what other key things that maybe after you've been on the commission for 6 or 8, 10 months, something's come up and you've been, now I know this is what I do and this is what I don't do. But I think, and I'll go back to all the years ago when I started, you learn when something happens, as opposed to having some of the big ticket items put out up front in our bylaws. So maybe we encapsulate more than just this one item and improve our overall document. Because it probably says something explicitly about confidentiality, but if it doesn't, it should.
for example.
I just don't understand what would ever be the next step for us. Like, first of all, I would never talk to my neighbors. I don't like them. And I wouldn't listen to them if they said something, and I'm sure they don't like me and I really don't care. But what I don't understand is there's no way a personnel investigation on our part can never go any further. Like, I don't have access to somebody's personnel file and I don't even know what kind of investigation I would ever do besides somebody giving me some information and I say, you need to go fill out this form at the police department and do that. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna go take fingerprints. I'm not gonna go spy on the cops. I'm not gonna say, oh my God, what's he doing in his car?
Yeah,
Like, I
so then
don't
write
know
that.
where that, I don't understand. Like, I feel like we're dumbing this down.
Well, no, you're not. You're removing the language that says exactly what you just said, right? So if that's how you feel, then that's the language that exists. We have other commissioners that are saying, we're not happy with that language. And so what I'm saying is, in concert with what Jill has brought up, let's define the word investigation. My request is don't delete anything until we have something to replace it, because it's not harming us. And let's talk about it. Maybe there's other things that you want to add in this section that I think would be very healthy to the commission. Remember, you're not, every time there's a new pope, he doesn't rewrite the 10 commandments. So your bylaws are just that. They're your governing document. So you're not writing for them for the way you want to operate for the next year. You're codifying rules for the police commission. I mean, the initial one was from 2009. There's a lot of stuff that stayed there. So you're really codifying how this body is governed for years and years into the future. And so just take a little bit more time with this. I think it's healthy. That's my suggestion at 9 o'clock.
My concern is that investigation is going to be very hard to define.
Yeah, I think that's a bad word. So,
Let's ask Labor Council, who deals with labor investigations, right? So
Why don't we ask Mr. Burgum?
can do that, and the department will seek guidance from Labor Council then, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, folks, my job is to conduct internal investigations.
Right.
And so I don't want the commission, who I ultimately report to have any rule that could negatively impact what I'm trying to do, which is properly police our own. This commission has plenty of examples of me reporting discipline to you or bringing matters to you. And I asked that we talked about before, what's handcuffing the police? Don't do anything that's going to handcuff what I need to do. Let me preserve due process rights. I don't enjoy them, right? I'm annoyed that we don't have a meeting tomorrow night, but it is what it is. And I respect that. I'm asking this commission to respect that process. I don't believe you have any reason not to, is my point. So just a pause.
This is not about your process. It is completely not about that, Chief. This is about blinders on the commission. And I agree, it is not appropriate for me or any other commissioner to go rogue and try to build a case against some officer or employee of the department and then present that case and then sit in judgment on it. It would be wrong even if I weren't going to sit in judgment, even if I intended to recuse myself. It would be wrong for me to act like a prosecutor. That's not my job. But I think it is my job to listen to Jill's example, friends, neighbors, people who take the initiative to contact me because I'm the chair of the commission and they think I'm a logical point to bring a concern to. And I want to be able to say, well, what's your concern? What's the basis for it? I don't think that's an investigation, but that's all I did before. And I was accused of conducting an investigation. And the bylaws were amended to prevent exactly that.
Right, and I support that change. So let me give it to you one step further. So let's say that the same person that goes to you in your capacity as a police commissioner, who, in my opinion, you ask the next questions that you should have. They're now sitting, and I have not heard from you. They're now sitting in front of an investigator. And they say, well, I told Chubb this. The investigator then now has to interview you as part of the internal investigation, which goes to the employee and his labor council through the union prior to their Loudermill hearing. And they're going to say, the police commissioner was involved in the investigation, which means they should not be involved in the adjudication process. I don't want that to happen. So I want this commission to respect those boundaries, because if you don't, it does affect what I have to do as the chief law enforcement officer, whose responsibility it is to police our police. And that's my concern. So you and I have an instance, we won't get into detail, where a citizen came to you with a complaint that you never told me about. Had you told me about that, that officer would have been terminated 2 years ago. That's concerning to me. This bylaw does not allow that to happen.
We're not going to sit and talk about that event.
But it's concerning, right? I mean, it is. Had I known about that, there would have been an internal investigation 2 years ago. And not sharing that information is not healthy for the police operation. It caused negative retention. And that's why I think tonight, little pause button. You talk to your attorney, I guess we can, Storm could talk to their legal counsel. Maybe they could meet, talk, have coffee, golf, whatever attorneys do, and talk about what an investigation is. So we all understand what is that box? Where is that line? And then we can all live by that line.
I think the line is whether or not it becomes a complaint. You know, if it's an actual complaint, like if it's actually imperative where we go to you and say, this needs to be, when carry it on further. But if it's,
I think your point, you're saying before unless there's a complaint, it's not an investigation.
Yeah, like-
And I think that's too restrictive. I really think you could have what I would think of as an investigation, even though somebody decides they don't want to file a complaint.
So here's what's interesting, right? So through law, the post standard tells us kind of what a complaint is. Right? So an anonymous email that complains about something has to be treated as a complaint.
right,
And so that should be no different than you. When we start asking questions, right, that go beyond the very few cursory things, it becomes an investigation.
but anonymous.
Anybody, your best friend comes over and says, the other day, my car got searched and the cop was rude. Oh my God, what happened? Well, I got da. Listen, here are the options. I can call the chief, they can investigate. Oh, screw, I don't like him. Okay. You can file a written complaint. I'll go down to the police station with you. I'll help you send an email. Those are your responsibilities.
Or, you know, who's commissioner.
Listen, totally different, right? You're on the Park and Rec Commission. Someone bumps into you in Stop and Shop and says, I totally forgot to get my beach pass. You don't open your purse and give them a beach pass. You tell them what the procedure is. There is no difference here in your responsibility as a police commissioner.
I just think we're all fairly intelligent people, and I think you know when you're crossing the line. Like I said, I don't know how much further I could take an investigation. If somebody comes to me and you know, they're complaining about something, I always advise them, like, well, you have to either go file a complaint or you have to do this, you have to do that. Like, I don't understand where one of us is gonna go, like, maybe get the cop's fingerprints off something or his DNA sample. Like, I don't understand what we're talking about, a further investigation. To me, you ask a clarifying question to figure out what direction to put them in, and I think that ends it. I don't know, maybe nobody else thinks that, but that's how I feel. I don't need people's details. I've had people call me and they start and I'm like, I don't wanna know the details.
Yeah.
So
Like,
you're adhering to the current bylaw, right? That's my point. There are others here who don't want that bylaw. So
well,
we
no,
have
I
to
wanna
find,
change a little bit to what we have here.
so we have to find some sort of medium ground that allows me to do what I do, doesn't allow you to misstep to cause an issue in the process. And I think, quite frankly, Jill's suggestion of let's try to, while it may be difficult, Mr. Chairman, to try to figure out if we can come up with a definition of an investigation that we all can live with. And then you may consider adding a couple other things here that are beneficial to you, to Joe and Jill and Jessica's point.
I don't even know what my.
I think we're gonna be very hard pressed to get people to agree on what an investigation is and to what point you can go to.
I don't think so. I gotta be honest, I really don't think so. Being a guy who spent a career of doing investigations, I think that there's definitely a line.
It's that word though, like we go,
Excuse me.
like, it should be, you know when to stop somebody coming to you with a complaint. recognize when it's important enough to go to the chief and stop the person, once you recognize that part.
But see, here's the other thing too, when you write a bylaw or a policy, it's not necessarily for you, right? So we hashed this out. Right? So I agree with everything you just said, right? Again, we at this point all kind of understand the line, but we need to write something for those that come after us. Like that's really the point of this, because we have a common understanding, but we need to codify that and write it for the future. That's what you were gonna say, wasn't it, Jill?
That was what I was gonna say.
I understand that point, but I mean, a responsible person who decides to run for a board or commission should start educating themselves a lot earlier. People are gonna run in November, they should be watching these meetings, they should see what we're talking about right now. I don't like when we come in and everyone's like, oh, it's a new commission. No, we've all sat here, the majority of us, and it's like, we're not starting all over every single time. I don't think people need their hands held, I really don't. I don't have a problem with this language. I just honestly don't think you're gonna get the labor attorney to agree, Bertram Moses to agree on what an investigation is. I really would hope that we'd all be smart enough to know where you draw the line.
I have to be very honest, it's such a discussed topic nowadays on how to handle complaints about police officers. I do believe that these two attorneys can put their heads together and come up with an agreement that we all can live by. Right, so if the gentleman who, when I have a labor issue, who reviewed the document I've given to you, right, that you'll discuss in executive session at some point. Remember after the meeting, we do have to get dates and times. That's reviewed by him. So he would be the one to tell me if we misstepped at all in an investigation and what that liability would be for the town of Old Saybrook. At the end of the day, we're both on team Old Saybrook here. And so we have to make sure that we're both doing the right things in our individual capacities to get the result that we desire. And in this case, a fair and impartial investigation with due process rights being upheld.
And you're specifically talking about like of an officer complaint.
Of any employee complaint. But
Okay.
that's really what we're talking about here, right? So investigations, because I don't think investigations means criminal investigation by any stretch of the means. I think it means employee investigations,
Or,
Personnel
Or-
related.
personnel related.
okay,
Thank
so
you.
that could be like specified, but like if somebody says, they're speeding down Mill Road,
Different.
yeah, having cars at the same,
Totally
like that doesn't, so then.
Yeah, you can't go out with your radar gun, I'll arrest you for impersonating a police officer, right? But that's totally different. This is personnel
Okay,
related
so
stuff.
person, so then
That's all we're talking
that's
about.
like clear.
And in fact, one of the thoughts is to delete, the title of it is investigation of personnel related matters. And so maybe we just, again, need just to see if we can get a definition of that word. I do think that's possible. I really, really do.
You want what they say here is a definition of investigation,
Who is they?
Google.
Google.
Yeah.
Well, I don't take all my law advice from Google, but
Yeah.
let's hear it.
An investigation is a thorough search for facts, especially those that are hidden or need to be sorted out in a complex situation.
Okay.
I don't think any of us would go in a
Well,
thorough.
so then the question is, what is thorough, right? That's gonna be the question that hangs us up. And so I would not use that definition to describe a personnel related investigation. See, I said personnel related instead of employee business. So my suggestion is, why don't we let the two attorneys talk on the word investigation and see if we can put that in somehow, some way, and see if you want other things in there too. Again, there's no urgency to this issue. It might even be combined with the other bylaw at some point.
Yes, and actually, that's exactly what I'm.
You know what I
thinking
mean?
right
Maybe
now.
that's all part of that.
You mean the citizen complaint bylaw?
Yeah, I think that's where you can talk about personnel related investigations, right? I mean, so maybe everything gets wrapped into that. That one, Chairman and I both agree needs a little bit of work, some collaborating, maybe some executive session type time. But we're both willing to put in the work to achieve
I
something.
thought we disagreed. I thought we agreed to disagree, but
No, you said we would give that time and you would allow me time in executive session to speak with the commission. Is that no longer the case, or? That's still the case, right? Sure. Yeah, okay, so.
What about the word exploration instead of
Yeah, wait.
investigation? That's a synonym. Cinnamon.
Here's my suggestion, by January 31st, we have opinions from, I'm assuming, Attorney Mateo and from Virgin Moses. When we have our special meeting that we need to have over the personnel matter, we also have another item on the agenda to have the read through and finalize this, so at the regular February meeting, we can then vote on it.
Or what about Inquisition?
I think that's a great idea.
I'm not sure you can, I gotta look at their bylaws, but. I think bylaws go from one regular meeting to the next, yeah.
Exploration.
I thought we were only vote on the register. No, that's,
We can only vote on them at regular meetings. We're not having another read through on this. Are we?
On this, the one we're talking about?
No, these others.
No, those are getting voted on.
Those are getting
Yeah,
voted on.
my suggestion with this is let's push pause. Let's maybe start discussing the other one. Maybe it's all combined, or have the labor attorneys talk about what investigation is, or maybe that happens either way.
That should happen regardless. I think.
Yeah, and then talk about if you want to add other things, like I've suggested, like responsibilities of members of the commission.
Right.
Okay, can we move on to item 6 then?
wait a minute.
Well, I think you need a motion to table
We
it.
need a motion to table that one.
I make a motion that we table the responsibilities of commissioners to inform themselves by law until the next meeting.
Second.
Second. Oh, wait a minute, till the next meeting.
Or, well, what?
I don't think you, when you table it, you can put. it
Oh,
on.
we'll do it just there. All right.
To a future meeting.
Strike next meeting. But I like it.
I'll second.
Third, oh no, some things.
Any further discussion on the motion to table?
My discussion is what I just said, is that I think we need to get this opinion sooner than later.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure we can have a special meeting for a read through. Am I incorrect? Yeah.
I don't know. I have to.
Yeah.
I think again,
Because I think when we get to the February meeting and we're gonna have the read through on the last one, that's gonna be an all-nighter and we all know that. So I don't want to tie it up with it.
Okay.
That's just my
And I will do
opinion.
my best to talk with Mr. Burgeon
Okay,
post haste.
thank you.
We'll get the two to talk together. I think that's what they should do. They should have an attorney to attorney phone call.
Oh, I think I should be involved. I do.
I'd love to see them just collaborate and get back to the both of us, right? Why put undue influence on anything? Let them just hash it out.
Because anybody likes word Inquisition.
Can we vote on tabling?
Inquisition.
Okay,
Yeah, there
let's,
should be.
any other discussion on the motion to table?
No.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 6, report of the ad hoc committee.
Okay. It's just very simply, we're meeting again on February 9th at 6 p.m. I have compiled as per discussion from the last ad hoc meeting, I compiled a sample draft evaluation tool from the Morristown evaluation that we talked about. The committee will review it and revise as needed at the very next meeting. And then discuss next steps as to where to go or how to proceed from here on. Whether to bring it to the full commission or to keep on working on it. So that's the report.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Any candidates?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Master Sergeant DeMarco, I've been in the department for 26 years. I'm the current vice president of the police union. I just wanted to have a documented on behalf of the union concerns. Our concern would be. I just want to speak on behalf of the union and address some of our concerns with the incident that happened last week involving Commissioner Trippy's nephew. We're in a situation now where we've had 4 instances of her involvement somehow in his arrest. And it's been very concerning to members in regards to if they're brought up for disciplinary hearings or promotional exams, etc., that there might be a bias because of based on past police interactions with her and her nephew. So I wanted to have it on record that the union has these concerns. I don't know how they're addressed, but it's something that I think needs to be looked into or addressed on behalf of the union members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Did we skip over correspondence?
Do we have anyone in the virtual audience? No hands raised?
No.
Okay. Comments from the chief of police?
Point of order, someone down there said it, you're right, I think you skipped correspondence, or did I miss it? We may not have any, just trying to keep us,
I'm sorry,
no, that's okay.
I inadvertently skipped correspondence.
Okay.
I did receive a Christmas card from the superintendent of schools, which I didn't bring to share. And I received a Christmas card addressed to all of us from Keith Margada, which I also didn't bring to share.
And obviously that email that we received about that person didn't know how to access the press release. Did your email bounce back as well?
No,
Both of my emails bounced back to that address.
Did you reply?
Do you get bounce back emails? Do you get reports?
Maybe there was a junk email.
it might have been in junk.
Yeah, I tried twice. I tried finding a phone number for the person and nothing, but if they're listening, I'll be more than happy to explain to them how to access the press release. So the communication was regard to why isn't the press release updated on a regular basis? It seems like it's every other month. That is not true. As the commission knows, and I detailed in the communication to you, every 24 hours with a 24-hour delay, the press release is automatically updated. It doesn't touch human hands anymore. And you have the option to search longer in monthly intervals or select your date range. So that was the only other correspondence that I think I can remember.
And I'm pretty sure everybody on the commission has received that.
Yeah, to Carol's point, there is a lot of communication that goes on between myself and the commission in between meetings. Just so the public knows that I don't talk to you once and then see you the next meeting, that there is communication that goes back and forth. Which I think is healthy for people to know.
Yes. Thank you. All right, comments from the chief.
Real quick, thank you very much for this meeting. As a citizen, I'd love to see the collaboration tonight. It was really good. This was, I think, a very beneficial session, and I liked how pretty much everyone was working with each other. So thank you for that.
Comments from police commissioners, starting at.
I'm going last.
Okay,
Can we have the police commission meetings uploaded onto the town calendar?
I'm sorry.
Yes, we can.
The police commission meetings uploaded to the town calendar.
Yes, normally that's handled when we book them for a year,
Yeah.
and that wasn't, so we'll get on that.
And then I had a question, I think it was last meeting, we were talking about, you get reports on officers. And then we looked into the full time and you even said, you were concerned with it. Is that something that, you could share with us why you'd be concerned with it? I mean, is that why there's no point doing speed traps on my road and stuff like that?
Yeah, so great question. So the more time we're on task,
Mhm.
we're in a reactive mode. I'm investigating something, I'm doing paperwork for the arrest, I'm processing a prisoner, I'm all reactive. Patrol is proactive, driving around town, omnipresence, being seen, proactive motor vehicle activity and spots for people complaining about. So the less time I see on patrol is less opportunity to do anything that's proactive, that's deterring crime or trying to prevent something bad from happening. And so it's concerning to a chief who runs a small PD that if we're not spending a decent amount of time being proactive and we're spending almost all of our time being reactive, I'm not doing anything to prevent crime, I'm just reacting to it.
Yeah.
And so, we have internal conversations. I have a leadership team tomorrow that we're going to talk about that to see how we can get our employees on patrol a little bit more. I know what I'm going to hear back, that they're busy, and they are, but they're going to hear from me that I'd like to see more patrol time as best we possibly can.
I mean, a lot of the complaints we have gotten are about speeding and about, nobody's there to see it and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting. Throughout my years of policing in Old Saybrook, oftentimes when we address the neighborhood speeding complaint, we find out it's the actual neighbors in that neighborhood. And then they come back with, well, don't you have anything better else to do than sit in our neighborhood and take radar? So it is interesting, but we do address it. The 3 speed boxes are really a benefit. And so while we're, not with them, their presence increases our omnipresence and it does slow things down. And so what we try to do is we deploy them, then we follow up with some concentrated motor vehicle activity in that area. So people know the box is not a joke. But thank you.
Carl,
I think it was a productive meeting tonight, and I'm looking forward to voting on at our next meeting.
I just have a brief comment. I wanted to get dates from everybody for our next special meeting. The chief has suggested some, and some of us I know have responded, but apparently not everyone. So I wanted to.
You suggested some?
So I asked for availability for next week. And now I'm asking for availability for all of the following week. So the week of the 30th and then the week of the 6th. If you want to just get back to me after the meeting and send me what your availability is, we have to match that up with availability of the first selectman, labor council, and union council.
So if we responded to the 30th,
I'm cool. Just give me the next.
okay,
Yeah.
I can tell you right now that Jill and I and Carl are not available on February 9th.
right, we're doing the ad hoc.
Right. And however, if that's the night, I might ask you to move that for maybe, might I suggest a more important personnel matter?
I can do anything on the 30th or the 6th.
Surprise.
The 30th.
Well,
Yes,
I mean-
of course.
I'm back here on the 31st.
Yeah, so if you guys can all send me, because
Yes.
this is a herding cats event for me. So you just send me an email, that would be fantastic. And I appreciate you bringing it up, Mr. Chairman.
Happy to.
Yes, I don't have anything.
Carol?
Is that okay?
Awesome, thank you. Renee?
Okay, I'm a little disappointed about the comment that was just made by Master Sergeant Markar. The emails that everybody received said that I was an employee of the town and that this was not going to be discussed in public. If we're going to start giving testimony, then I'm going to tell you what happened. I was at work on Wednesday. There was an altercation in my yard. At no time did I show up at my house. My brother called me. He said, there's police tape around your house. You are not allowed in your yard. And then he said, my neighbors were there. And I said, I do not want them in my yard. My neighbors have no business with what is going on there. It had nothing to do with them. I didn't know what was going on and what happened until I received the email from the chief that said there was a traffic stop that then turned into this. Once again, I'm being accused of interfering. I do not know how I'm interfering when I'm not even present at my home. I just think this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm gonna call this not even a witch hunt, it's a bitch hunt. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. And if anybody wants to put themselves in my shoes, this is what, the third or fourth go around? And what happened last time? Attorney Cronin read a 3-page opinion letter that said, I'm not to be removed from this commission. If somebody thinks I'm gonna step up and resign, you're dead wrong. It's never going to happen. I just don't understand this. I don't understand how this is even happening. If somebody thinks I interfered, put the cuffs on me right now. I'll go to Middlesex and I'll take my turn up there. I'm not going to be attacked anymore. I've had enough of it. I have no control over that. If you think you have control over your family members, then fine. If the chief has control over his family members, fine. I don't think anyone can say that they do. I cannot take responsibility for what anybody else does. I think I'm owed an apology. I'm not in the mood for this.
Thank you.
And I don't understand where we got that I was an employee and it wasn't gonna be discussed, and then here we are in public discussing it.
All members of boards and commissions are considered employees.
Okay, and then I have my rights as an employee then.
You do. You're the one airing all your concerns. No one else is.
Master Sergeant DeMarco is the one who mentioned my name.
He's a member of the public. No one here tonight on the police commission, nor did I mention this incident with that. He's the one that's disclosed.
I don't know where that's driven. It's the same way when Dave Parati stood up and started talking about me. I'm not an idiot. And guess what? Dave Parati told me that he was forced to do that. I know what's going
No one's
on.
forced to.
Your judgment is so clouded because you want me off this
You
commission.
are
No, it's my turn to talk. I don't care if you think I'm embarrassing myself. This is
Mr. Chairman, I would
ridiculous.
ask for some decorum from your commission members.
Well, you're not gonna get decorum from me. I'll tell you that much.
So, I mean, it's
I made a similar statement.
So can I make comments now?
No. Comment is over. That's done, Sharon. And
I
if
think
there's
we're done.
nothing else, if there's no more,
yes, I move to adjourn.
a second. Anyone second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.